Welcome to the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. I hope you guys are doing all right today. I am still not acknowledging a bug of some sort. Things have been worse, so I'm not going to complain all that much about it. But I am dragging ass this morning. Nevertheless, we're going to do a show. I considered not doing this episode, but screw it. Point where the thing gets going, it gets going, and we go from there. I hope you guys are doing okay this morning, though, despite my own infirmities. And as often, I'm not going to say it. You know what? Screw it. I'll say as usual. We have a damn good show for you today. If anybody is going to be the lagging indicator on the show, this is going to be me. My guest should be on point. We have Arnaud Develay. He's joining us. Rall is going to be here at 8:30. Michael Maloof is going to be here at 9 a.m. and Sarah Bils is going to be here at 9:30. I have to be honest with you. You know, I'm enamored with some of these people. When Maloof, Sarah, Arnaud, I can go with Arnaud sometimes too. When they first started coming on the show, they would barely break 1,000. They would the viewership was relatively low on their videos. Sarah hits 8,000 every video at this point. Maloof, I think, hit 8,000 in the last several videos. Arnaud hit 4,000 or 5,000. They have been doing fantastic. And I love that fact. It's like you build your house, you're building your people. It's sure, you can bring Ritter on. But, he says the same thing on every show that he's on. He's a canned equanimity. I'm not picking on him. I'm just saying there's several people who will give you a canned thing. It's almost like a sermon, right? It's like a preacher, make you feel good. It's a little bit different though when you're building people and they're coming on giving their straight point of view. It's a good thing. That's all. It's a good thing. And again, not picking on Ritter. It's just in our circuit of people who gives a certain point of view in our, let's say in our space. You have certain channels that have a tendency to recycle a particular guest. And for obvious reasons, the guest brings in a high number of views. I would argue inconsistent. I would argue that. But brings in a high number of views. And so it makes sense that any show they can get their hands on it once they get their hands on them. I'm saying it's a little bit different though when you're grabbing people who don't start that way and who you have this kind of opportunity to grow with, not just with your show, but also in their own shows. DD Geopolitics does great work, especially on Twitter. Esteban, the Cradle does great work. These aren't necessarily huge names, but these are names that seem to be growing. And I think it's great to be able to grow with them. I don't know. Again, I'm not throwing any shade, nothing to that effect. I'm just kind of pointing it out. Either way, I hope you guys had a good morning or had a good night. Those of you who are not on the East Coast, I hope you had a good day. Let's get into the show. Yesterday, Dr. Zabin was on the show. I have a monologue, but I'm going to save the monologue for 8 o'clock because I have a gap at the 8 o'clock hour. But I do want to point something out. Zabin was a really good guest. At least I think he was. I understand he wasn't everybody's cup of tea. Somebody pointed out we're now interviewing a caveman. Okay, that is highly inappropriate, even though it may be funny. Highly inappropriate. But I got to be honest with you, I was ill prepared for that interview. And I was ill prepared for the way the interview went. I don't plot down every chapter and verse of my interview because I don't like doing that. I like to be able to have a conversation with the audience or with the interviewer, person I'm talking to. Many people who watch the show misunderstand what the show is trying to do. The show is not about giving the guest a monologue. The show is about a dialogue, a conversation. There may be some people who I would give and let them just kind of go. Mark Sloboda being one because Mark Sloboda is fountain of knowledge. But there are other people who actually want to have a conversation with. Dr. Zayman went from money to God, which fascinated me, but I didn't know where to go with that conversation. And I felt like I mismanaged that talk with him because I didn't necessarily know where to go with that conversation. When it is super interesting. And I have to be honest with you, I get enamored, I get high on those type of conversations. There's a reason I'm such a fan of Frank Herbert, the God Maker, one of the books. Dune, God Emperor Dune, in regards, this kind of introspection into God. It is an interesting thing to me to go into a conversation about money, which is allegorical to, on some level, a conversation about individualism, and to add to it that it is a rejection of God. Oh, that is fascinating. Oh, that is. Whew. And the only thing I could do is sit here is like, whoa, is that where we're going with this conversation? And the answer was yes, that's where we're going with this conversation. Now, some of this stuff is cultural, right? And from my point of view, it's entirely ideological. So he may say that my point of view is a rejection of God, or I may, take it as him saying it. But from my point of view, his point of view is just ideological. There's, you can add God to it to add heft to a point of view, but at the end of the day, the only thing you got is your point of view of the world. There is nothing else. I don't think God cares if God exists. I'm not an atheist by any stretch of the imagination. But this game board is this game board. And I don't think anything intrudes. And there may be these esoteric states. There may be a certain level of mysticism that's allowed, fair enough, in regards to psychic function, fair enough. But I don't think God intrudes. And what you end up with is a point of view. And that point of view has to be enough. There are some points of view that are advantageous to an objective, and there's some points of view that are disadvantageous to an objective. That's all you got. There is nothing else there. There is no magic to that. Either I have a point of view, a workable point of view that allows me to work towards a particular goal that is in my best interest, or have a point of view that is detrimental to my objectives. Just that. Sometimes you don't even know what your objectives are, and your point of view is detrimental to whatever you're doing, that if you could look at it from a higher point of view, you would come away with a different assessment. Life is complicated in that sense. So I do understand why a person would add God into it in order to try to enshrine it with a certain level of sacredness. This point of view is sacred because this point of view is a better point of view in allowing humanity to persist in a better way. Fair enough. But again, God is being added to that heft as if just being a person is not enough. I don't know. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. It's the Star Trek thing, right? Where they're like, these people living in a cult. Okay, you can say they're living in a cult, but their point of view is the point of view that they figured out that's in the best interest of humanity for it to grow into this kind of paradise. There are other points of view you could take that don't allow you to end up in paradise. And from my point of view, it's a logic issue. It's a chess puzzle. What is the thing that gets me the thing that I ultimately want? And what is the point of view, the workable point of view that humanity needs to take in order to get us to that point of view, to that place? Do I need to add God into it? I don't think so. But apparently many people believe that they do. The rejection of God thing is just fascinating to me. It just was. I have to bring Dr. Zayman back on. I don't care if Dr. Zayman gets one view. I would love to delve into that conversation with him greater in a deeper way. So one of the things, we have 5 minutes, sorry. One of the things that has taken place is we're on day 2 of not knowing on the Epstein cover-up. And I have to be honest with you, I'm with MAGA in being completely confused at why the Trump administration wouldn't release the information about Epstein, the book, as Dr. Wilmer Leon pointed out. I am completely and entirely baffled as to why the Trump administration wouldn't release the book on Epstein's client list. I am completely bewildered. I have no idea why at all. What name could possibly in that book, in that list, that would prevent the Trump administration from releasing that information? I am bewildered. I'm bewildered. I'm unclear as to what, right? Why are you throwing your body to protect a pedophile? Super interesting question. Super interesting question. Tucker Carlson, I think, hit it the right way when he said this. It's funny to me, but yeah, let's hear him.
I didn't know that. Really? But how can you say that thousands of children were raped, but I'm not going to find out who raped them?
Yeah.
How can you say that?
I agree completely.
They said that. By the way, when Pam Bondi went on television and said, I have a videotape of kids getting abused, I followed this case closely, and I know a lot of the people involved, as I told you.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea. I didn't know that. Really? Thousands of children got raped?
Yeah.
Who raped them? Where are the rapists? Like, why aren't they in jail? What? This is the Department of Justice.
Yes.
That is so crazy. This is honestly one of the craziest things I've ever seen in my entire life. And I just think it's very dangerous to play around with this stuff. Like, very dangerous.
Well,
I don't want a revolution, but if you wanted a revolution, this is how you would act.
Yes, yeah.
But how can you say that?
If you wanted a revolution, this is how you would act. If you wanted a revolution, this is how you would act. And Tucker's exasperation is correct. That is the point of view. That level of, oh my God, I can't believe they're covering up for this pedophile. That is the correct point of view. I mean, think about what we were told. And I'm not going to hit this because I'm going to hit this with John tomorrow. John is going to give more of an intelligence angle to this. But this is pretty breathtaking when you really put it into context. I kept asking, where are the Johns? I was asking that when they first pinched Epstein, and I'm still asking that several years later. Where are the Johns? Where are the Johns? And apparently the Trump administration has come back and saying, there is no spoon. There are no Johns. Epstein didn't exist. And Ghislaine Maxwell is a myth. Hell, might as well go all the way with it, right? If you're going to try to get the public to believe that there were indeed no Johns. It's outrageous. And yet, this is what they want you to believe. And I suspect at the end of the day, they don't really care about whether you believe he did it, whether they were Johns or not. From their point of view, it is plausible deniability. And you will stew around saying that the government is lying, that Trump is lying. But if you don't necessarily have anything to pin them down on, then they believe this will blow over, just like CIA murdered Kennedy. And unfortunately, they're probably right. They're probably right. So there is that. The other story has to do with, my guest is here. Okay. I wanted to get into Russia. Because I am fascinated by what is taking place in Russia right now. But my man is here. I am joined with Arnaud Develay. Arnaud Develay is an author, political analyst, and international lawyer specializing in international criminal law. His book, Foreign Entanglements, Biden, Ukraine, and the Fracturing of America's Political Consensus. Arnaud, what you doing, man? How you doing? You doing okay today?
I'm doing fine, Jamal. How are you? I understand you're under the weather.
A little bit. Yeah, I'm dragging a bit of ass, but that's okay. It happens. I'm just the man. There's this movie, Beekeeper. I am one of those people that get enamored by, I guess, not really esoteric concepts. It's these concepts of what it means to be a person, what it means to be a man. It's kind of existentialism, and how man could transcend himself when man takes on the role of something else. And the guy was in a fight with a beekeeper, and he says, "You're just the man." It's like, and I love the fact that he had to say it. You're just the man. Arnaud, there is an article that you sent me, and I'm so glad you sent me this, because I responded to a post on my comment section, because I read my comments. I disregard the ones that I think are nonsense, but the ones that I think are legit, I will respond to. And the international law, guest Arnaud Develay. The reason why I thought this was so timely was because I just responded to the guy who said to me, Jamal, don't be a nihilist. international law is a real thing. Just because it's being flagrantly violated constantly and always doesn't mean it's not a real thing. And I think that was kind of like, dude, your comment kind of makes my point, right? Like if you're saying that this thing that is supposed to be real, there's a wall there, and yet people are walking through it. Okay, but if you can walk through it, is it really a wall? Or is it something else? I'm going to let you hit that because my argument is there is no such thing as international law. I want to get to Russia, but I want to get to this first because I'm super curious about this conversation. I'm going to shut up. I'm going to let you make your argument to me why there is international law. I'm going to sit here quiet as a button, and I'm going to listen to that argument, and I will respond after. But give me your thoughts. For someone like me, who apparently is a nihilist, who said there is no Leviathan, there is no international law, that there is nothing above states, tell me why I am wrong in this.
Well, you're starting really strong here. Let's put it this way. When you talk about international law, obviously you're talking about the ability for sovereign states to somehow cohabitate among each other to the extent that their sovereignty is not infringed upon. I guess that's the first. If we go back to Grotius in the 16th century, this idea that there's an international system, whether you call it the Westphalian system or the unipolar moment, which is almost, when you look at it on the long term perspective, is almost like an anomaly. Most of the time, you have competing states, and to the extent they compete, there are rules within which the competition is allowed to take place. Otherwise, the competition cannot take place. It cannot be a zero-sum game, as it were. I'm not going to discuss the international private law, anything, and there are treaties bearing, for instance, on international family law, if you want to take an example as such. So international law in that sense here is perfectly viable. Decisions made in the context of divorces or child custody will be enforced from state to the extent any given state has signed and ratified the treaty. Same thing with the WTO, anything dealing with contractual law, international business, you have supranational rules. So international law works there. I guess what we are talking about here when we wonder whether or not there is international law, or if whether international law per se is real as a thing, we're talking about international public law, i.e. the relationship as in between nation states. And I would argue that it does exist, and it has existed, although it's always conditioned to its implementation and its observance. Most of the time when we are in an ascending phase, and international law appears to somewhat work when it's implemented by powerful states, because powerful states, by virtue of their power, compel other states of lesser reach, lesser radiation, lesser influence to play along with the rules. So you have this kind of unstated rules, which we tend to call customary international law. They are not necessarily enshrined and crystallized in a positive law like treaty, for instance, or UN Charter per se. But they are rules that basically everybody abides, because if somebody starts going off the deep end on a certain thematic, then it creates a precedent which benefits no one. So there is something as international law. It's just, again, that, and I'm trying to be as profane as can be, so that people who are listening to us can somehow wrap their mind around it. And we're not here to do like a magistral courses or lecture on it, but the idea is that it is an elastic concept, and international law per se only comes into play or into sight if you look at the long term. Decisions, practices failures will be somehow incorporated, sometimes over centuries, and by then it will become something that is strictly prohibited. If I take, for example, what happened in Baghdad in 2005, 2006, with the so-called trial of the former Iraqi head of state. In that particular context, in as far as the concept of international criminal justice is concerned, international criminal law, I should be more precise here, the concept of fair trial can obviously not be considered viable when such a venue is administered essentially by an occupying army. And so, to the extent we knew the tensions were ripe, that the communities making up Iraq, modern Iraq, were at each other's throat, the very fact of holding such a highly emotionally charged proceeding in such a context, in and of itself, I'm not going to even consider what constitutes a fair trial. If we look at the provisions in Article 14 of the ICCPR, or Article 10 and 11 of the International Declaration on Human Rights, Universal Declaration on Human Rights, or any kind of regional body equivalent of those provisions, the fact remains that you cannot possibly conceive holding a trial in a country that is just, well, that is still mired in conflict, after 30 years of a part of that population embodied in or incarnated through the defendants, in a context where everybody is seeking, first and foremost, vengeance, revenge, blood. So that's a concept that hopefully, has been integrated now, in as far as the international criminal system is concerned. If you have to ask for a relocation of the trial to another venue, I don't think it will meet any opposition. But we had to go through this so that the point could be made. And it's been 20 years. And one at the time, a lot of people were trying to validate retroactively an illegal invasion predicated on an illegal, acting without the purview of the Security Council, and certainly not within the purview of Article 51. Everything that basically flowed out of this illegal invasion is illegal. That's the other point as well, is that the establishment of the Supreme Iraqi Tribunal is an illegality because it flows from the illegal invasion. In American US doctrine, it refers to the fruit of the poisonous tree. So you cannot have, to begin with, and when we're talking about fair trial, if we zoom out and we talk about the establishment of this so-called international tribunal, it makes no sense because it's predicated on an illegal act. You see, so all those things are pretty much integrated now. They were decried at the time by experts from the International Law Commission, the special rapporteurs, the General Secretary of the United Nations himself came out in criticism of what was going on. Then even profane people like John Burns from the New York Times, was wondering what the hell is this masquerade going on here. So we can now take it for granted after 20 years, a lot of articles have been written on the issue, notwithstanding whether or not the defendant had to account for some of the most heinous acts, allegedly committed. But the problem is we never got to even 10% of what he is alleged to have committed during the 30 years he was in charge. We basically settled on a very minute trial dealing with attempted assassination on this person in 1982 in a border town with Iran, while the two countries were at war. There was an attempt on his life. Some of the people were identified, arrested, tried. Whether they were tried in a fairly fashion, that's another story. But the fact is, there were decisions, judicial decisions. And as the head of state under the Iraqi constitution, since the penalty of death applied to the crimes that were those people were charged with, he basically executed his duty as head of state by signing the execution orders. But we never got into, for instance, the campaign against the Kurds. We never got into the reprisal against the Shia population in the south following Iraqi the Desert Storm war. We never got into the gas attacks on the Al-Abja. So there's a lot of things we never got into. We never got into the Anfal campaign. And why was that? Because we knew that if this guy was allowed to speak about what he knew and with whom he worked, who facilitated, those actions, who equipped him, who financed him, that would have created a major international embarrassment for the United States. So just to say that, a trial which does not respect the right to the defense team, the right of the defendant, which does not address the right of the victims, because again, we never got into remotely what had been used as justification for the establishment of the tribunal to begin with. All this in a context where the country is about to explode for at least the next 10, 15 years in a major, nasty civil war. Just to give you an example of this, the day of execution was chosen to coincide with the holiest day in Sunni Islam. So it was all, they were trying to inflame tensions to such a degree that intra-religious civil war was inevitable from that point on. So, but basically, if we come back to what I was saying, as far as international norms are concerned, specifically applied to international criminal justice, you cannot have a trial in a jurisdiction established itself out of an illegal act, deriving out of an illegal act, bearing on judging a head of state for anything but what you justified the establishment of this jurisdiction to begin with, and in such a context where basically the country is about to, is still emotionally so charged, bearing on what this person represented for a significant chunk of the population, and expect to have decorum and respects for the defendant's rights, short of frontier justice. This is what you have to do: is you have to relocate. At the minimum, they should have accepted to relocate, and there were alternatives available to relocate the proceedings. Now, for political reason, this was never even entertained a second. So the idea is that over time, yes, go ahead.
Just interrupt real quick. Do you believe that with the political pressure that was going to be applied in that trial, just use this as an example, since this is the example you're using, that the result would have been different? Because look, they're going after people who were, the US had put pressure on the ICC to put an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin.
Yes.
Because Putin was taking kids out of war zones. Okay, that's pretty wild, right? By the same token, the ICC was shamed into finally going after Netanyahu, and finally shamed into going after, Gallant, I believe. But let's be honest, they could have also went after the entirety of the US state. They could have went after Joe Biden. They could have went after Donald Trump. They could have went after all of these people. They didn't do that, though. I guess I'm saying the political pressure that is typically applied, even with the OPCW going into Syria, these were international bodies that were used for purely political machinations to go after enemies of, let's say, the West and the US. Even the IAEA, when they bombed Iran's nuclear facility, a violation of international law. Again, another one. What happened? You got the IAEA very quiet, not saying much of anything. You got the European powers that effectively attacked Iran, despite the fact that Iran was the one that was ultimately attacked. I'm saying with that level of political clout, how could any notion of international law, even if it's the standpoint of a law or of a trial, How could it ever be fair?
Yeah, but you're using the argument of throwing the baby with the water of the bath here. It's not
No, I'm
because
not.
some of the,
No, go
let's
ahead.
say, and we have to be cautious here, but insofar as the alleged lack of impartiality of someone like Rafael Grossi is concerned, since specifically you're alluding to him.
Alleged?
Well,
Alleged?
I mean,
Would you like me
he
to play
hasn't.
you the French
Yeah,
guy who was like, well, we don't know where the weapons are because the IAEA is not in it's
well,
not in Iran.
until he has to face an internal administrative procedure, and those allegations, as it were, are confirmed. We have to say alleged. That's called the presumption of innocence, right? You were presumed innocent. See, that's the
I don't
concept here.
presume you're
We have to
innocent.
be.
I'm
We
not in
have
a court
to.
of law.
We have
I'm
to be
pointing out
precise.
I'm pointing out that the French guy, I could show you the clip when they asked him, do you know where Iran has the nuclear materials? And he says, well, I don't know because the IAEA is no longer in Iran, meaning they are not telling us, so we don't know, which means that the allegations were correct, that the IAEA was dispensing that information out to various other people. But okay, we can say allege. We can say allege. We can say allege.
Well, because you cannot paint the whole agency in the same stroke as you would its director, is what I'm saying. The
He runs
agency in
the
and of
agency.
itself,
He runs the
yeah,
agency.
but he runs it. But there was someone before him who ran the agency by the name of Mohammed Al-Baradei, and he did an excellent job in trying to debunk what the US was talking about in as far as Iraq's alleged nuclear capabilities. Same thing with the OPCW. Bustani was somewhat of a decent man who tried to acquit himself of his job responsibilities
Yeah.
until he was threatened, and he and his family, by the way, by John Bolton, and they put somebody more malleable, as Joe Biden was fond of saying when talking about the general prosecutor of Ukraine, someone solid that we can work with. But this does not in and of itself invalidate the structures that have been put in place. The problem is, as you say, and this is something that deals again with the unipolar moment, because those things could not have been made possible if not for the unipolar moment. So we are now dealing with the direct consequences of the unipolar moment, which is coming to a close, and thanks God for that. We need to, realign and have a rebalancing of things, and then international law and its instrumentalities will, reintegrate the legitimacy that they should have,
I don't.
kept all along.
What I need you to
But
explain to me is that
but it's a
law
political
requires.
process. It's a political process. It's
Fair, fair enough.
yes, it
But
is.
law.
It's power politics, and you
But
have
law.
to,
You go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah. Well, the law, the international law, in that sense, and I guess this is what we are both alluding to. It's the result of a delicate balance of the means to enforce one's interest, in the sense that there is a consensus that emerges, and then over time, this consensus solidifies and becomes something that nobody dares to contest. But when you have a lack of balance, like we've had the last 30 years, international law, obviously, it takes two to tango. In other words,
Yes.
this is the concept. It's all about, it's the laws of nature. That's why we created initially at the level of the state, the nation state, the monopoly of violence. The notion that if there's not one sole authority with the monopoly of violence, i.e., the state, we go back to man is a wolf for man, right? This kind
Right.
of the original state of nature, complete
So who has the
anarchy.
monopoly of balance on the international stage? That could
Well,
now.
technically, everybody, in a way, and that's the concept when we look at the UN, more specifically, is every member state at the UN, when it becomes a UN member state, has to somehow surrender a modicum of its sovereignty towards this organization, so that the organization can have the legitimacy to act on their behalf. That's how it
Yeah,
works.
but that's not the way it works. That's the way they say it works. There's a difference, and that's kind of what I'm getting at. The moment that you have, Superman, is Superman ever? Superman has to allow himself to subject himself to law. He is not subjected to law. He is Superman, meaning there's no way that the US or any other country in the world can put any kind of law on Superman because he's Superman. And I'm making the point of saying that the US, Russia, China, these are supermen in a world that can come up with any law that they want. All things being equal, none of these countries have to acknowledge or abide by those laws. And if that is true, meaning there is no Leviathan, there's no hegemon, there's nothing above any of these states that could implement or force them to accept law, then is it really a law? That's what I'm getting at. Like laws in a normal sense, parlance of the word and the term that we use it. If I don't pay my taxes, there's going to be a man that comes to my house that can beat me up and take me to jail. He has the disposition, the monopoly of force. That doesn't exist on an international level. You just have a law of the jungle where they trying to impart laws on these countries that don't have to follow them at all. And I'm saying, if they don't have to follow them, why are we pretending that they exist?
Well, you're alluding to one of the core principles in the UN Charter, which is the respect for national sovereignty. So unless the country at issue is caught committing, youth organs violations, and even then, as we've seen with the event in the last 2 years, it doesn't mean that we're going to have a UN-mandated coalition, put together to go after that state.
Right.
But the idea is basically that you should obey certain norms, because if you don't obey them to the extent you're going to, it's all cycles. A state may be powerful today and may not become as powerful over time in such a respect that once that state is not able to prance around, as it were, and ignore laws, it will be suffering, inversely, proportionally inversely, the way he was bullying the others. See, the wheel turns. This is also, what we know about the international relation over the long run. So it behooves you to act in a way that does not expose you one day to being subjected to the illegality that you are advocating now on the premise of your raw power. You understand?
Arnaud, come on.
Well, look at history. That's the way it's been.
No, that they don't think that way. Look, that may be true.
Yeah, because they don't think in the long term.
Yes, that may be true in the long term.
You have to study. Just observe the long term. Observe the long term.
But that is not the way people behave. Like, meaning people, as human beings, it is better for us. Like, meaning it is good that we don't kill, because I don't want to be killed, right? As a human being. I don't want people eating human beings. So, let's make a law against eating human beings. We can kind of agree upon that law. I think rape is bad. Rape is obviously a cancer to society, so let's not do it. Meaning there's certain things that, yes, we agree upon as human beings of saying, hey, this is cancerous to our way of relating to one another. Sociopaths don't care. Like, sociopaths don't care about that stuff. The United States are full of monsters. John Bolton famously doesn't believe in missile treaties and those type of things, because from his point of view, we are primary. We are the greatest country on the planet. We're the strongest country on the planet. And any rule that we make another country. Well, his point of view is any rule that we make weakens us, because meaning we can put stuff in space you can't, so let's do it. We can do whatever you can't, so let's do it. Meaning he believes that any rule is a restraint on the US power. That's his point of view. He's a sociopath. I'm saying I agree with you in the standpoint of human relations, but that is a philosophical argument that sociopaths don't care about. The US just bombed.
I agree with you. But again, the wheel turns. And they're not going to always be, the fundamentals of the US are not the same if you compare from 20 years ago.
That's true.
Everybody agrees that the country as itself, the state, does not have the means to affect its power projection as it did 20 years ago. And it's bound to accelerate exponentially. So at some point, it's going to be difficult to keep that same stance on international norms. if you want to survive in international legal system. Again, I agree with you in everything you're saying, but you have to look at it in the long term, because we're dealing with nation states here. We're not dealing with units which have an average lifespan of 72, 75, 78 years. We have to look in terms of centuries. And in terms of centuries, nation states, again, some of them rise, some of them prosper, and others die out. They disappear, including empires. So it's this issue that you want to try to, as much as possible, act in such a balanced way that you ensure that you increase your longevity. Let's put it this way, because the nation state doesn't have any friends; it only has interest. What is the number one interest of a nation state? Self-preservation. Not even expanding borders. It may go through a phase of extending borders, but action reaction. Whomever those borders are being extended in terms of at their expense, right? At some point, you're going to have a pushback. Look at what happened with Germany. They had a phase of expansion until at some point they basically found the whole world ganging up against them, and they were reduced to a two-bit state, literally.
Right.
So it's a winner take all. I agree with you, and sociopaths will think like this. Hey, I'm on a roll. Let's keep playing. Let's put those coins in the machine. But sooner or later, you're going to hit a brick wall. So if you don't have the international law to somehow preserve what can still be preserved, you might be completely reduced. And in that sense, God knows there were options put on the table as Germany's defeat was inevitable. One of them was to bring them back to the age of agriculture. I mean, completely obliterate them. The Morgenthau plan was that. Well, I guess there were some people who thought maybe in terms of norms, that might be going a little too far, right? But the very fact that those options were on the table and being considered tells you everything you know about how Germany had generated such an animosity toward itself that for some people, at least, it became conceivable to completely reduce the country to, almost like down to a biological level, so they could never rise again. Right?
They should have. They should have. Yeah, yes, I'm a hard ass. I'm looking at what Israel is doing. Germany should have. They lost the right to exist for what they were doing as a country. That is,
and that's a good point that you're saying. The right to exist. Nobody has the right to exist. I mean, no nation state has the right to exist.
Of course not.
That is the biggest crock I've ever heard. There's no right to exist.
Thing, right? You have to invoke God to get for the right to exist. Yeah. I guess what I mean by that is, at a certain point, the state forgoes
its legitimacy to exist if it acts outside the purview of implied, let's put it this way, accepted norms of cohabitations as among nation states.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right. Let's get to Russia. You've indulged me, and I thank you for indulging me on this.
Thank you. Thank you.
So it seems that Russia has a new strategy. And that new strategy, it seems that they have been able to increase drone production to a point where they can put out 500 to 700 drones a night. And you think to yourself, Donald Trump is sending 10 Patriot systems to Ukraine. And it's like, okay, but what does that do when they send 720 hypersonic missiles in one night? And by the way, they've been doing this night after night after night. Here's another one with chemicals hitting their targets in waves. What the hell is that? What the hell is that? Right here. Chemicals hitting their targets. And you can see them coming through the sky. I mean, this stuff is just astonishing. Or maybe it's this one right here. If you look, you can see the strikes coming through the atmosphere almost with like split seconds. All of these hypersonic missiles that are hitting their targets. You press a button and something is destroyed in a few minutes. Is this a new strategy? I mean, am I getting that right when I say this is somewhat of a new strategy that Russia is going with? They've been able to produce so many I think they call them Joran 2 drones, that they can now fire these things pretty much anytime, anywhere, at anything, in swarms, in a way that air defense is meaningless.
Mhm. Yeah, it's called overwhelming their defense systems.
Yeah.
It becomes overwhelming. And so whatever, it's not a couple of a few Patriot missile batteries that are going to change anything. They're just basically taking over the sky of Ukraine in such a way that you're left speechless. I mean, like you said, 500 drones per day.
That's
I
astonishing.
mean, I don't know how much Ukraine had to employ itself a few weeks back when they sent, I think it was 500 of them, but one time they did it one time.
Yeah.
Over the Moscow regions and other regions as well. But here you're talking about 500 drones per day. So it's basically anything that's remotely of military value, logistical nodes, anything that enables Ukraine military to function is going to be systematically pulverized.
Is this a new norm?
I call it the big downgrade. They are ramping up the downgrading to such degrees that we haven't seen before. And the Geran are really good at that.
Yes,
they're cheap to make. Yeah.
And they're making, from my understanding, 500 a day, meaning they can do this every day in perpetuity because the number that they're producing equals the number that they're using. Am I getting that right?
Deploy. Yeah, no, you're right. That's what Mark Sloboda actually discussed. No, that's where we're at now. So, I mean, that's what we get from saying those stupid things, over the telephone, because they don't know what to, they add their wits hands. They don't know what to do.
Yeah.
It's like it's almost as pure as mathematics. You do not produce, you don't have the industrial base to keep up. And so war making is all about having the industrial base to keep, the intensity to such a degree that over time, one of the protagonists just basically waves the white flag. And this is where we're in that phase now. And since basically we don't seem to see above and beyond the humanitarian aspect of the Istanbul cycle of talks on the merit or on the more what I call the substantive issues bearing on NATO membership and all that. There's no discussion going on right now, and the US seems to have somewhat decided not to really be helpful on this, to the extent they might have said at some point, okay, let's call it a day. So it's on more than it's ever been before.
Well, it's fascinating to me because it seems like Russia's finally realized either Trump is not in control of his government or Trump is a flagrant liar, and it's probably both. So why are we
both? Yes.
Yeah. So why are we negotiating with this clown? Let's just get this over with. Meaning we're going to win this on the battlefield. We're not messing around anymore in regards to negotiations. Is that fair to say?
It's completely fair to say. Although, there's always, obviously, the door's always open, for talking. I mean, look, Macron called for the first time in 3 years. The Kremlin took the call. And they stayed on the phone for 2 hours. Even though, if you remember, the circumstances of the last phone call before, where all the, and that's another international norm that, that when that was revealed what Macron had done, revealing the content of conversations, diplomatic content, and laughing about it with his collaborators, in the 80s at Palace. I think the whole world around people, at a certain level were really dismayed of that. And it was even gawky as far as the profane are concerned.
Right.
So that's another norm right there. Like you would not, execute an emissary, someone who's on a diplomatic mission, as some kind of immunity. Even if he's not an ambassador, he's an envoy. You don't kill an envoy.
Right.
So there you go. Another
Why
example.
would Putin even take that call, by the way? Europe is, I find them to be a pointless endeavor. They're radically weak. They have no hard power to speak of. They're vassals of the US state. What is the point of letting these people posture and preen when they're just peacocks? There's no substance to any of that stuff. Macron got beat up by his wife, for God's sake, who the people questioning whether it's even a woman. Why on earth is Putin wasting their time with a battered husband?
Yeah, but the battered husband, alleged battered husband.
He got hit. We saw him get hit.
No, they were horsing around. It was horsing around.
Whatever. Whatever.
But it turns out that it turns out that this guy is, for better or for worse, the head of state of France. So you have to work with what you got.
Right.
And so to the extent this guy is calling you, for the first time in 3 years, of course you gotta take the call. I mean, what does that hurt you? It doesn't hurt you. You can probe him, because those calls are recorded. So then they are, people whose job it is to analyze every single fragment of the conversation, the pauses, the hesitations, the tonality of the voice, you name it, the decrypting of the language used. See what?
But he has no power. Like, meaning there's nothing that...
Well, he has the power to be eventually a nuisance within the collective West, because this guy is, if you understand his psychological profile, you will quickly gather that he's someone who enjoys the limelight. He doesn't want to be a second fiddle to anybody.
Right.
So if you can flatter him in a way, in a very subtle way, that might be of use for you down the road, right?
But, okay,
You have to
maybe
cultivate people.
Maybe I'm a hard ass, and I'm beginning to realize I am much more.
The subtlety of international relations. It's it's an art. It's an art form.
But over and over again, any relationship with Europe, whether it was the Minsk agreements 1 and 2, whether it was Macron leaking that phone call, whether it was Europe preening for the last 3 years, they have been given money, materials, and weapons in order to kill Russians on a battlefield in a war that Russia never wanted. Why is Russia? Okay. I'm not gonna beat that.
Because Russia is gonna have to live with those countries as they've lived with them for centuries prior. I mean, those people that you are referring to, Macron and all the others, they're gonna be here for a little while. At the scale of a bilateral relationship between countries, those are just mere moments. So you cannot, This is what Roland Dumas, former foreign minister of François Mitterrand for 10 years, once told me when I had the chance to meet him. Says you never want, rule number 1 of diplomacy, within international relations, you never want to sell out the tomorrow. You don't know what tomorrow will be like. And so you never want to burn bridges, ever. That's rule number 1. And don't let personal grievances or irritation get in the way of such principle. And so the Russians, or should I say the Russian establishment, is a very educated, trained, experienced, savvy outfit, and they understand every subtlety about international relations, probably more than any one of their counterparts, maybe except maybe the Chinese, who for in their own style also have this this long lasting understanding, the long term. It's all about the long term. the long view. And so, yes, so you take every opportunities you can to explore the possibilities. That's what it's all. It's all about exploring the possibilities. And every day brings its own sets of surprises and opportunities, which can, be exploited if you're savvy at the game. It's an art form. But if you adopt this dichotomy, black and white, good versus evil, Bush Jr. Or Reagan, rhetoric, yeah, you're going to amputate yourself of a lot of things. I mean, if you start saying to your would-be interlocutor that he has no legitimacy to even express his own point of view because he's X, Y, or Z, that might be problematic on the road. Yes.
But they have been seeding their societies with Russian hatred, not even communists, Russian hatred. They have spent the last 3 years coming up with one way or another to destroy the Russian state. And they are right now given weapons in order to kill Russians. It wasn't a war that Russia wanted. Russia wasn't seeding its people with hatred of Europeans. I mean, hell, Putin was kind of more, an Atlanticist in some level, or at the very least a European, what's the word I'm looking for, was more open to Europe. And so was Medvedev. All of these people were open to relationships with Europe. It was Europe that provoked this war. It was Europe that blew off the any kind of deal that could be made. It's Europe that has been seeding its population with hatred of Russia and Russophobia. So I'm not being a hard ass in that sense. I'm pointing out that these are the people that have been doing this for the last several years. And these are the people that are right now doing everything in their power to kill as many Russians as they possibly can and planning the destruction of the Russian state. How am I wrong?
Yes. No, you're not wrong at all. But at the same time, look at what cost those policies are being carried out. They've completely obliterated, hollowed out what remained of their industrial base. Their economy is in tatter, to quote von der Leyen. Their own population hate them. Notwithstanding the Russophobia, their own population are paupers now. I mean, they're paying, inflation has trebled across the whole spectrum. Are people in those countries better off out of those, because of those policies? I doubt it.
But Arnaud, that's not the way I think. I don't look, as an American, Trump often makes these arguments. Oh yeah, I know it's bad for us, but China is getting it worse. And I'm like, why do I care about what happens to China? I care about what happens to Americans. And I don't care if every European is making $2 an hour as a result of what they're doing to the Russians. It matters more of what they're doing to Russia, if that makes sense. Like, it's not about them being paupers and them hating your leadership. It's about the number and the casualties that were associated with the war that they provoked. Look, when I was working at Sputnik, it took me a while to fully grasp what was happening. And when I finally did grasp it, I was floored. I was just shocked by the whole thing. I was like, these sociopaths provoked a war that never needed to happen. And going by William Burns' note back to 2008, where William Burns is like, you are going to provoke a war by pushing NATO membership on Ukraine in a way that Russia doesn't want, but it's happening on their borders, so they would have to get involved in either way. Meaning, going all the way back to 2008, they knew this was going to provoke a war, and they did it anyway. And now you get like 1 million Ukrainians dead. You might get, 100,000, 200,000 Russians. That's outrageous. And so when I'm listening to Macron make that phone call, I'm like, why am I ever picking up that phone call from this sociopath, this degenerate human being that has gotten all of these people killed? And maybe Russians are better than I am. Fair enough. I mean, I accept that. Their diplomacy goes beyond this personal ire that I guess I feel about them doing this. But I'm getting sick of these countries initiating these wars that are purely for geopolitical interests. And then having this, let's say, media machine might in the West that then lies about it, whether it's in Israel, whether it's against Iran, or whether it's against Russia. They are creating a fantasy reality that all of these other countries have to somehow grapple with. And Russia is one of those countries that has enough power to tell them to F off. But they don't do that. They will be very diplomatic. And they would sit there and talk to Macron for 2 hours, even though they know that Europe was the one that provoked this war. It is aggravating to me. That's all. I'm just aggravated. Do you believe that Europe is looking for a war within 5 to 10 years?
Well, that seems to be the plan, yes. If we look at their statements, their adopted policies, obviously they're going for a doubling down strategy, right? They're still, it's like trying to get out of the hole. What do? You dig a bigger hole, deeper hole. I guess they're assuming that by 2030, Vladimir Putin, if we go by the constitution of the Russian Federation, won't necessarily be in power anymore, and by then they hope to be able to have to compare favorably in terms of the industrial output is concerned.
Yeah.
And try to go for another try to exploit also the possibilities of activating fifth columnists inside the countries. They haven't given up on that. It's a long-term goal, not of the European puppets, but of the deeply seated interest, in the West. Yes, they want Russia dismantled. It's a very long-held objective, and they count on grabbing those resources, buying themselves a new lease on life. As far as their development, their model of development, so that they can regroup, retool, and prepare to go after the final domino, which is China. That is how they look at it. Yes. So, but tomorrow is never set in stone, so you don't know. You don't know what's going to happen. No, can they even last until 2030 under current circumstances? I'm not so sure about this.
That's a good question. That is a very good question. Yeah,
they're sowing the branch on which they're sitting.
Yeah,
and so I don't know. It's a game of will in the end. It's a game of you have to stay put. You have to remain focused, but you also have to remain flexible, and you have to exploit any opportunities, advantage, of which there can be initially minute versions of, but that can turn out to be a game changer. When you look back at the sequence itself, sometimes entire event hinge on small details, minute details, which you never overlooked, which initially at the time you almost mechanically by the book took into consideration, and in a way exploited to your advantage, and it turned out to have been the grain of sand in the machine.
Is it fair to say that the Western system, how can I say this, that one of those grains of sand that may make the difference in all of this is what seems to be an incompatibility of systems, with the Russian system being stronger? And just to explain what I mean by that, the US makes all of these expensive weapons. It's a capitalistic system that cares more about the capitalism as opposed to what it's supposed to be doing, meaning it's not building something for what it does. It's building something because it makes money off of it and building it, in which case you have these high-priced weapon systems that seems to be ill-suited to modern warfare, whereas Russia is building systems, especially for the context of the warfare that it's fighting, that is perfectly suited, that is inexpensive, and is very effective, and is able to do it in numbers that dwarf all of Europe and the US combined. And these two systems are colliding in Ukraine, and it's becoming clear that the Russian system is able to maintain what it's doing. I mean, for God's sake, it's producing 500-600 drones a day, and is using 500-600 drones a day. Like, that is an astonishing number of air raids that are constantly this barrage, this daily barrage, that obviously air defense becomes pointless in the system. The amount of money that it costs for THAAD, or the amount of money that it costs for Patriots, these missile systems are very expensive. There's no way that you can use them day in and day out to take down 500 drones. That's assuming they even work to take down a drone in general. Like, are we seeing, I guess, the doctrines of war collide, and the Western doctrine don't seem to be up to snuff in this?
Well, I fail to see what the Western doctrine is, to be honest, except lining up the pockets of people at the most high-profile manufacturing, weapons manufacturing companies. I mean, look at the waste. Even if we look at the 1 trillion DoD budget, a lot of it is going to be disappearing in holes that you have no idea what it's all about. Because fundamentally, you don't need that much money to preserve your interest as far as your national security is concerned. But now, to the extent...
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm just trying to point out, that's kind of the point that I'm making. That is not the way Russia funds its wars or fights its wars. That is the way.
Russia will decrease its military budget for the upcoming budget year, I think, by 5%.
Yeah.
Because you don't need that much. You don't need to spend $1 trillion. What for? It makes no sense. So unless the idea is to create this permanent war state of war with the world, the entirety of the world, that's not sustainable.
Yeah.
Every entity that has attempted to do to pursue such follies has been smashed to smithereens. That's on the record, historically.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the US has managed to elicit such loathing and hatred against itself. I mean, it's a brand, right? They're trying to sell themselves as a brand worldwide, and they've accomplished the exact opposite. So you've given your perceived enemies right there a fantastic tool to mobilize their own population against you. So I don't understand. Makes no sense. It's almost like whoever is teaching at the War College these days, has completely abandoned the classics. We just have a bunch of guys in suits. Yeah. Just
in the US, the military, when you talk to people who are in the military, they would say, look, this is not us. This is political space. They would say that there's a clear difference between the two.
I don't know. I can't imagine that the whole higher brass at the Pentagon is completely feeling like destitute, like there's nothing they can do. I mean, at some point, those people have kids, right? They have expectations for their kids and grandkids. At some point, the temptation is to think, this is not viable. This is going to lead us into the wall. And so, they also basically are sworn to protect the Constitution against foreign and domestic enemies. So maybe they should coup certain people or, whoever. It's feasible.
Doesn't work that way here.
It's feasible.
It doesn't work that way here. Like, the military space is attached to the political space and follows the will of the president. Period. And so whatever feelings they may have about whether it's a good idea to blow something up or attack something or something to that effect, they are subordinate to political interests. And so it's not the military asking for $1 trillion. It's Trump that's asking for $1 trillion. And to make it more plain, each of the political districts has something being built by military. And so if you cut the military budget, you're pulling money away from certain districts, which various Congress members don't want. That's what I mean when I say political systems. Like, this is the way our political military system runs. It's more so on a capitalistic rationale for it, not in sense of use value. Like, for example, if I'm in Russia, I say, okay, I need $80 billion a year for the military. And I'm like, all right, we're going to make these weapons. We're going to make them for this amount. We're not trying to gouge. We're making them for what they cost. They're going to be inexpensive. They're going to be effective. And meaning you have a very concise, efficient system for determining what you need and to expand upon what you need. And it's based upon your needs. That's not the way it really works here. I mean, they built the F-35. The thing works half of the time. And it's like, okay, you spent how much money to do that? Like an astonishing sum of money to build that plane. Even though, and there were other planes where the military wasn't even asking for.
And the Osprey, remember the Osprey? $2 billion for the Osprey to people. It was a flying coffin.
That's my point. Like, it's different. Like, the political system is fused with this kind of capitalistic intent. And I guess that's what I'm asking. Are we seeing the failure of this from the standpoint of the West? Like,
well, yeah, because you're not even trying to build the most performant systems.
Exactly.
If at least you were applying yourself to create, you know, state-of-the-art system, but you're not. So where's all that money going? And you're referring to a lot of districts relying on U.S. military procurements contract. But what's being built next to that? Nothing. I mean, over the last 20 years alone, we look at the infrastructure is collapsing. There's no money for anything but for the contractors.
Yeah.
So whoever is benefiting from the system, it's a shrinking pool of people. Every single year is shrinking and shrinking. There's nothing. The American dream, it's only working for them. Even if we use that, you know. So it's an anthropic process. It cannot last. It's impossible.
Yeah. I think we end where we began on this notion of, you know, countries should behave a particular way because at some point those countries are not going to be leaders. And I think we're seeing this with the US. And I get the sense that it is.
That's an interesting point that you're making here, because here you're talking about what happens when you behave like this abroad, i.e. the imperial mindset.
Yes.
You tend to re-import the way you treat natives out there. You bring that back home. We see it with the way not only the police departments across the countries, but some of the military as well has been sent out to for externship and workshops with their counterpart in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And so any kind of law enforcement, you know, mechanism, techniques of subjugating a suspect, you know, this has been brought back into the streets of LA and New York with, you know, terrible consequences. When we're far from, you know, Mr. Friendly policeman from the 1950s, to the extent that ever existed. But I'm saying today, you have those kind of, you get swatted for nothing today. And those guys look like RoboCops. I mean, Paul Verhoeven was really onto something when he did that movie. He was a visionary because he knew where we were going with the corporatization of law enforcement. You know, so but yes, Machine Man. You know, or Starship Trooper. You know, the Starship Trooper.
Yeah.
See, the whole world population are a bunch of bugs. We gotta find the main bug. There's no main bug. It's in your mind. It's in your head. Your deluded mind.
Those people are terrifying. Arnaud, man, thank you for this. I really do appreciate it. I appreciated this conversation deeply. I really did. Arnaud Develay, he's author, political analyst, and international lawyer specializing in international criminal law. His book, Foreign Entanglements, Biden, Ukraine, and the Fracturing of the American Political Consensus. You be safe, man. Have a good one, okay?
Thank you, Jamal. Thank you, sir.
All righty. All right. I want to do a monologue, and I'm going to cut this. And I'm going to call this The Limits of American Power. In fact, I don't know what I'm going to call this. I do have a point, though, that I'm trying to make in this. Donald Trump is a shit-spewing machine. Full stop. Period. Nothing else to add to that. The things that he says are so outlandish in the context of reality. And he seems to not quite grasp the reality of things or if he does grasp the reality of things, is still stuck in this mindset of, I'm an American president, I'm a hegemon, and I need to behave as such, and I need to make everybody else believe it, even though Trump has no power in real terms in this process. Jamal, what are you talking about? So Donald Trump recently came out and apparently, and said this right here, claiming that there is a lot of bullshit coming out of Putin. Now, I'm going to play the clip first, and then I want to delve into this. Because what you're seeing here is a president with no power, a weak man that has no power to change the situation to which he is talking about. And his frustration is boiling over with him dropping expletives about President Putin.
That was a war that should have never happened, and a lot of people are dying, and it should end. And I don't know, we get a lot of bullshit thrown at us by Putin. For you want to know the truth, he's very nice all the time, but it turns out to be meaningless.
It is true that Putin is always a diplomat when he's having these conversations. So Donald Trump acknowledges that. That's true. Bullshit, no. Putin and his entirety of his government has been consistent in a way that Donald Trump is never consistent. They call him Taco Trump for a reason, because they know that Donald Trump is all over the place. Just within the course of a week, Trump said, I'm going to stop weapons, and then I'm going to resume weapons. When he had the conversation with Putin, and Putin effectively told him, do whatever you need to do, we are pursuing our objectives. Russia was very specific from the very beginning of the special military operation regarding what they wanted. And even Putin, when he was like, okay, you want a ceasefire, these are the things you need to do for us to consider a ceasefire. And the United States didn't want to do those things because what they wanted to do was freeze the conflict along the lines and continue to give Ukraine weapons, which nobody in their right mind would do. Losers don't get to dictate terms. And the US president, who doesn't want to look like a loser that he actually is in this situation, doesn't want to acknowledge his loss. And so what he has decided to do is, I'm going to send patriots to Ukraine. Okay, fair enough. Russia is producing 500 drones a day. Russia has been sending 500 drones a day to hit pretty much any and everything in Ukraine that stands, which means that they can do that every day. Do you have enough patriots, which didn't work all that well in Israel, to combat that amount of air power that is coming your way? And I would like to add to that this article within the context of that question. The US is only 25% of all Patriot interceptors needed for Pentagon's military plans. The reason that they stopped sending missile systems, oh, you can't see that, this. The reason that they stopped sending missile systems to Ukraine is because they didn't have them to send. The Biden administration had been sending missile systems to Ukraine for what, 3 years? They've been dumping one after the next, sending them all sorts of weapons, all sorts of missiles, all sorts of air defense, and has been sending those things for such a long time that now you've gotten to the point of you have multiple wars. You have to deal with Israel, who apparently used 20 years worth of systems within 12 days. And you have to deal with the issue of Ukraine, where Russia has been sending 500 drones, not to mention chemical missiles, a day. Where are your cards? Right. Where are your cards in this? How do you manage a situation like this? A, you don't have the weapons to send. B, you don't have the air defense to send. C, Ukraine is getting rolled. And no, that doesn't necessarily mean Ukraine is on the brink of collapse, but it does mean that their capability and ability to withstand this barrage, I'm skeptical of it. Add to that this. So Slavian Grad pointed out when they were having this conversation about, well, and just so you can see what Ukraine has been going through, look at these strikes. There is no defense for these, by the way. These are Kim's missiles, 7 of them, if I'm not mistaken. And if you can look at the little explosions that are taking place, that's them coming through the atmosphere and hitting their targets, going 10 to 15,000 miles an hour. That's astonishing and terrifying. There's no defense against that. Here's some of the other images that are coming out. Some of these were recruitment centers, by the way. And in some of these cases, you got Ukrainians themselves contacting the Russians to tell them where the recruitment centers are so the recruitment centers can be blown up. This has been happening all over Ukraine. Here is, I guess that's a missile in the sky. Here's another one. There's a button in Moscow, and 20 minutes later, something blows up. Defenseless. And Trump sending 10 patriots. What is the point of that? My point is very basic, very simple. You have no cards. And the idea that you're saying that Putin is spewing bullshit, that's pretty astonishing. This came out from CNN at apparently a press event that Donald Trump was doing. Listen to what Donald Trump says that he told Putin and Xi Jinping, and you tell me he was spewing bullshit.
If you go in to Ukraine, you'll bomb down in Moscow. I'm telling you, I have no choice. The public wants it. The public. So he goes like, I don't believe you. He said, no way. And I said, wait. And then he goes like, I don't believe you. But the truth is, he believed me 10%. And I told you this, he believed me 10%. Then I'm with President Xi of China. But I said the same thing to them. I said, if you go into Taiwan, I'm going to bomb Beijing. He thought I was crazy. He said, Beijing? You're going to bomb Beijing? I said, I have no choice. I got to bomb them. We're going to bomb Beijing. And he didn't believe either, except 10%. And 10% is all you need.
Trump is suffering under an illusion. The illusion that he's suffering under is that these people, A, believe him, B, are scared of him. They're not scared of Trump. What they're scared of is that he is so breathtakingly incompetent that he would drive the world to a nuclear war. That is what they're concerned about. Russia is not Iran. Russia is not Iraq. Beijing is not Iran. Beijing is not Iraq. And I think KJ No is right about the bear fallacy, where you have people who believe that they can fight a grizzly bear. Every war scenario that the U.S. has fought against China, the U.S. has lost. And I would wager to you that Russia has the best military for the fighting that they are effectively doing. And if you feed them Europe, they will eat Europe alive. If you are trying to attack them, and it gets into the sense of an existential war, they always have the doombringer of ending the world. The U.S. and its military, or let's say its political leadership, is grotesquely incompetent. And the idea that Donald Trump is telling another world leader that he's going to bomb a nuclear power nation such as Russia, or for that matter, China, is breathtaking incompetence. Breathtaking incompetence. Trump is losing the war in Ukraine. It is his war at this point. Joe Biden has been president for 6 months, if not longer. Trump could have always walked. His association with Ukraine at this point, every day of it, is effectively a betrayal of MAGA and a betrayal of the United States, who, as he keeps saying, this war should have never started. Yes, you're right. This war should not have started. And you, as the president of the United States, the major mover and shaker in this, had the capacity to end it by walking away. Trump didn't want to walk away. And so now, with no cards, because we don't have the missile defense systems required to even assist Ukraine, and even if we did, the idea that they can deal with 500 drones a day is off the table. It is not Putin that is spewing bullshit. It is a confidence man that is trying to make a loss seem like it's something else. The media in this also plays a role in this, because Mark is right. I was there at the Biden-Putin summit, where the media is attacking Joe Biden for being too weak on Russia. And they seem to have this American exceptionalist point of view that Trump tries to feed. He tries to keep going. Hey, Mr. President, what are you going to do in Ukraine? Hey, Mr. President, are you going to send weapons? Hey, Mr. President, are you going to do this? When the reality of it is, he has no power in this process. Donald Trump could pass sanctions, which is what they're threatening to do, 500% tariffs on countries that are working with Russia. I say do it. Good luck with that. Let's see whether China, India, Saudi Arabia, and all of these other countries effectively fall in line. I'm very curious on whether they would do so. You're going to pass 50% sanctions on Brazil because Lula is going after Bolsonaro. Okay, that's deranged. Period. Deranged. But okay, do it. I want to see it. Show me. If you want to have a tariff war where you're going after Malaysia, Vietnam, and all of these other places, from my point of view, do it. I want to see it. Meaning, these things, from my point of view, are accelerants. Accelerants in a way that undercut the power of the U.S. And the fact that the U.S. has to effectively do something like this is not a position of strength. It is a position of weakness. It is a position of weakness. If you don't have soft power to influence, and you have to go to this level of vulgarity, this level of brutality, then something is missing. A president also that resorts to cursing is indicative of rot. My channel is named Jamal Thomas. If I drop an F-bomb on my channel is just me. There is no separation between me and my channel. If you see me in the street, I am the same person here that you will probably see in the street. That is just who I am. I don't even know how to wear a mask when I do this channel. This is just me. If I'm pissed off, I'm actually pissed off. If I'm laughing at something, I'm actually laughing at something. But that is just me. I'm not representing anybody but myself in this. People either agree with me or disagree with me. The president and the role of the president is different. He is supposed to be the embodiment of a country. And when you get him on video,
and I don't know, we get a lot of bullshit thrown at us by Putin for you want to know the truth.
do we really want our president cursing? Is that the highest of ideals? And you may say that I'm picking, but I'm not. That's abnormal. It's one thing for a president to curse in private. Okay, fair enough. LBJ used to drop F-bombs like nobody's business. But the presentation of it for president to be freely cursing on air is pretty astonishing. And my argument, and the thing that I think I'm pointing out is this is indicative of rot. This is not something that is a norm. This is something that is breaking a norm, even though at some point I suppose this is becoming a norm. But this is indicative of a degradation of the American political system, at the head being Trump. The president is losing a war. He has failed at everything that he has put his hands on, whether it was the Epstein files, which is just the latest betrayal, whether it was getting out of Ukraine, which is a betrayal, sending weapons to Ukraine, which is a betrayal, considering he derided Joe Biden for doing so for the last, X number of years before he was able to get into office, whether it was attacking Ansar Allah and getting beat in that war. Yes, you're able to murder a lot of people, but as I keep pointing out, murdering a lot of people is a means to an end. It is not the point of the war. The point of any war is the objective that you're trying to set in that conflict, meaning I am trying to get the king. Okay, well, what does it mean in real terms of trying to get the king? It depends on what your objective is. If my objective is I need to stop from firing stuff into the Red Sea, then that is my objective. Do I accomplish it, yay or nay? In Trump's case, the answer was nay. Even the New York Times points out that he was not able to gain air superiority over supposedly people in sandals. He wasn't able to do it. That's a failure. Even attacking Iran, giving the green light for Israel to attack Iran, and then to have to throw his body on his proxy because his proxy was getting taken apart. I'm saying all of these things were failures. Donald Trump has no successes as president of the United States. The big grotesque betrayal of a bill that he passed that is going to explode the deficit. And Trump's response to it is just to lie and say, there is no spoon. He has failed as a president through and through failed. The tariff war, failure. He got bodied by China and had to back down when the bond market started to assert itself, and he realized the full faith and credit of the United States was effectively crumbling when the US dollar has slid, 12% at this point. All of these things are failures. None of these things are successes. And he can walk around and acting like there's lipstick on this pig, but it's still just a pig. Still just a pig. I want to go to my guests. I am joined with my man, Ted Rall. Ted Rall is a political cartoonist, syndicated columnist, host of it's not Connecting the Dots. What am I talking about? Host of Connecting the Dots. Host of TMI morning show with the one, the only, the great, the beautiful, always smelling good, Manila Chan. How you doing, Ted, man? You doing okay this morning?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am doing okay. I'm a bit of a cold, but my cold medication is kicking in, so I'm not feeling too bad right now. I'm not feeling too bad. I asked you, I was like, hey, is there anything you want to discuss? And you said Mandani.
Yep.
I did this monologue yesterday where I was very angry with this fat fuck of a man, pardon my language, who was making this argument of comparing Mandani to David Duke, comparing him to comparing him to David Duke, comparing him to Nazis, comparing him to ISIS. I mean, like, he went full in. And, from my point of view, I'm like, I love this argument. Because that argument to me effectively is my argument that we are not on the same page. That the notion that the Democratic Party and people who are actually on the left are the same is nonsense. And when they're using a collective we to make it look as if, well, hey man, Kamala Harris is running, you guys should vote for Chris Matthews told me that when Bernie Sanders was running, it was better to let Trump win, because if Sanders takes it, he's going to take the party for a generation. So what Chris Matthews has explained to me, and what I saw with my own eyes as I lived through it, was we are not on the same page. And the fact that Mandani has won, or Mandani's wife's husband, because she's gorgeous, when he won, and the way they responded to it enshrines that even further to me. It hits that bell even harder for me. And from my point of view, the workers left needs to acknowledge that. And whoever they put up, I don't care, across the political spectrum in regards to Democrats, let them fail. I don't care if Satan himself is on the other end against whatever rando Democrat that they put, let them fail. We are not on the same team, full stop. Give me your take on this, because you're in New York. You see this level that they're trying to do. I mean, for God's sake, the former governor put out a letter saying, hey man, whoever's closest in November, we should support that guy. And it's like, dude, he just won the mayoral race. Like, in regards to the primary. How are you now pulling this nonsense of whichever Democrat is more popular, we should vote for that Democrat? The Democrat who won the primary was Mandani. You should support that guy, but they don't support that guy. Give me your thoughts, Ted.
Mandani is the only Democrat in the general election. Okay, Governor Cuomo. Okay, by definition, because if you go to the polls on November, the second Tuesday in November, in New York City, you will see one Democrat on the ballot. That's Zohran Mandani. You'll see maybe yourself, Andrew Cuomo. You're going to be you're going to be on an independent line that I forget the name. And if you look at the other candidates as well, including obviously there will be Curtis Sliwa in the Republican Party, and there will be the sitting mayor with his 11% approval rating, Eric Adams, who will be running on the anti-Semitism party, which is not the Democratic Party. So if the idea here is you support the Democrat who's closest, well, that's easy because there's only one, and that's already been determined, and that's Mandani. And it's so, if you're going to rally behind the Democratic nominee, that's him. If you're a Democrat, you're a loyal Democrat, you go behind him. And so the thing about, look, I love the way you put it. Though for people who read my cartoon who are watching, I apologize because basically I'm about to give away the topic of my next cartoon and the whole setup for it. But basically, it's like, this is like, okay, the Two Musketeers, right? Like, all for one, one for all. We're in partnership together. Like left-wing, progressive, working class, democratic socialists, like AOC style, the Squad, Bernie Sanders, the old guard left, the McGovern left, the Hubert Humphrey left. We're in it with you, fun, cool, kind of uptight corporate Democrats, the Hillary Clinton types, the Andrew Cuomo types, the Kathy Hochul types. Yes, we don't always get along. We don't agree on everything, but we're all Democrats. All for one, one for all. So when, as happens 99% of the time, the party makes sure that they get a corporate Democrat in as their nominee, it's blue no matter who. You Democratic socialists, you can't sit on the sidelines and let the Republicans win. Remember, it's all for one, one for all. And it's like, you have to, don't worry, someday your prince will come. But wait, but that day is not today. That day is you will vote for Kamala Harris, you will vote for Hillary Clinton, you will vote for Joe Biden, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, but then accidentally and strangely, some Indian Muslim guy born in Uganda blunders into a sweeping landslide win. And the city falls in love with him and votes for him as their Democratic nominee in a city where basically, if you're the Democratic nominee, you will be you will win the election. Oh, wait a minute. Wait, we never said that. We never said all for one, one for all. Blue no matter who. No, not at all. Stop Anti-Semitism Party, maybe. We'll go with them. They're so fucked up that, by the way, that when they look at the Mandani choices, the alternatives, this is the hilarious part. Latest general tracking polls just came out, right, for the general election. Mandani, surging. In fact, he's doing better than he did during the primary. It's like, because the more the establishment keeps pushing back and hates on him, the more the voters are like, oh, he must be all right. Because, newsflash, we hate you, establishment people. We all hate you. So then, you're the guys raising our rent. You're the guys making eggs cost too much. You guys all suck. So but if you look, Mandani's first, Cuomo, the one that the establishment wants to drop out of the race, so that someone else can beat Mandani. He's actually not a distant second. He is a second. It's not close to Mandani, but he's got the best shot at beating Mandani. No, we're going to get rid of him. And then it's like, we're going to, then there's Curtis Sliwa. No, well, we don't want him. Even though, he's a loyal New Yorker, been, quirky, but, New Yorker. It's like, no, we're going to go for Eric Adams with his 11% approval rating, indicted by the Department of Justice on extremely credible corruption charges, who lined his pockets and the pockets of all of his family and friends and their friends while he was in elected office. Didn't do squat for the city the entire time. We never see him unless he's out clubbing. And then so if you're not up at 3:30 in the morning in the meatpacking district, you're not going to run into him. And then finally, he's literally like, they're going to back him. So that's how insane they are. They literally are like, fuck the guy who's number one in the race, and let's back the guy who's number 4 in the race. And by the way, who sold the city out to ICE, right? Basically sold out the city's, landmark legislation as a sanctuary city. We don't co-op. Like, if you are an illegal immigrant, you can call the NYPD. If you see something, say something, no problem, because we're not going to report you, because we are a city of immigrants and we're all descended from people who came here illegally, pretty much. So, but he sold all that out. So that's where the establishment is. That's why I wanted to talk about this, because it's about the establishment freakout. It's like the fact that they are so opposed to the voters' will that they think they can jam the guy who's 4th in the race down our throats. By the way, Joe Biden was 4th in the race in the Democratic primaries, right? 4th in the Iowa and the Iowa caucus and in the New Hampshire primary. Let's take the guy who's we're number 4. And then what happened to blue no matter who, right? Like, oh, look, this is your blue. And I'm sorry, I don't care what, like, Islamophobic assholes have to say. There's nothing, there's nothing politically extreme about Zoran Mandani. He's not David Duke. I had David Duke 3 feet away from me in a radio studio for 3 hours once. And like, I got to talk to him at length. I went out for beers with him afterwards. I know David Duke. It's like, that's no David Duke. Okay. It's like, there's no comparison. And they're both smart men. They are, but politically, one is dedicated to the prospect that white European ancestry is what made America great and needs to be preserved at all costs. The other one believes that everyone ought to have an equal shot. Those are not the same thing.
I was looking for that clip, God, and I cannot find that clip because I would have loved for you to give your response to it. But yeah, the blue no matter who is a scam. It's a scam.
It's a lie. It's a lie.
See, I call it a scam because from my point of view, they know exactly what they're doing when they're saying blue no matter who. And I've had conversations with these Democrats or people who are liberals, and they would say, I would point out, hey, Sanders was far more popular, and he most likely would have beat Trump. And it was like, I don't like Sanders. And meaning, in their minds, I would rather lose. And as I pointed out to her, and you lost. Congratulations, you got Trump.
Right.
That was very brutal to her. Because from my point of view, it's like, dude, you can't do the shit of blue no matter who when it's somebody who's some kind of random corporate, robot that you guys want. Because they fit your thin level of interest that you guys would like to want and pursue in regard to your kind of third way Democrats. And then when the public chooses someone else, public will, you flip out. We don't want to support that person. We're going to use super delegates. We're going to use all of the tools at our disposal to try to get rid of that person. We're going to come up with reasons that we can't back that particular person because we don't like that person. But we expect and want you to back our rando corporate asshole. It's like, okay, I get it. I get the scheme. Fair enough. We are on the same page. We are not the same. These two things are not like the other. You win on your own merits. In which case, my hope is that they fail miserably. I think I said the other day that I hope the Democratic Party hit its head on the hardest corner, fall into a very lighted spot, and die. They choke, bleed out, and die. And we watch them do so dispassionately. They are a problem.
I couldn't agree more. And Jamal, here's the thing. I kind of feel like it's like, let's say you and I, we become roommates, right? And I say, let's split up the chores. I'll shovel the snow, and whenever it snows, I'll shovel it, and you do the dishes. Now the thing is, and let's say, and like we live in New York, which means it snows once every 2 or 3 years, but the dishes are 3 times a day, every day, right? But you're like, you're a little gullible, and you want to be a good sport, and you're like, well, we did agree to split the chores. Granted, I always just see Ted, sucking down a Lagunitas on the couch, while I'm doing the dishes. And he's, the snow shovel has not been touched in years, but that's okay because one day, it snows, and I'm like, I'm not going out in that shit. It's cold. And you're like, the fuck? I've been doing the dishes every fucking day, you dick. And like, you're not going out there to shovel the snow? No, man, I don't feel like it. Look at it. I'm not going out there. It'll melt. Like, whatever, leave it. I'm not touching that. You go do it. It's like. That's literally what the corporate Democrats are like. It's like they never have the whole bargain, right? Is that we're a big tent party. We have two big factions, and like we need you guys to support us. And when the time comes, we'll support you. Our time almost never comes. It's like the snow; it almost never happens. And then here you go. We had a snow. It snowed in the primary in 2016, and in 2020 it snowed, and it hadn't snowed in a long time. And it's snowing now in New York. It's like, and then where are these guys, right? Where's their fucking endorsement? Where are they fucking reaching for the snow shovel to help
They're
out,
not.
right? You know,
They're not.
Pelosi, Jeffries, Schumer. You could argue the other ones maybe don't have to. Schumer, he's a New York senator. It's his business. He's supposed to endorse the mayoral candidate for the city of New York. I guarantee you he did it in the past. You know, it's like they're nowhere to be found. You know, only Jerry Nadler is the only corporate Democrat who did the right thing, and he's not the most corporate Democrat. So, you know, he's kind of like on the left side of the corporate Democrats. So it's like it's you know, good on him. But God, that's the whole thing, right? It's like we made a deal with them that was never a good deal, and finally they have an opportunity to pay up, and they don't.
Yeah, that's my ire. That's my issue. That's my anger. I'm associated with it. My rage after the Sanders thing is unquenchable.
Oh, and not only that, they're scheming too, right?
Yes.
Like they're literally plotting against Mandani. It's not. I mean, it's bad enough that they're not supporting him, which they ought to be. They should be throwing money at him, support, infrastructure, offering to campaign for him. They should give him everything that they would give Cuomo if he had won. But they're not gonna, and they're not. But on top of that, they're not even doing that. They're scheming with like Mayor Adams, and they're plotting not only against their own Democratic nominee, they're plotting against the city of New York. I mean, this is the people's will. I mean, the general election polls. There's been several. They're very, very clear. Mamdani's running away with this. I mean, you know, he's lucky that you know, the mood of the electorate is so anti-establishment that the more they do, it's like jujitsu. It just works in his favor. I bet Bernie Sanders would have been able to overcome, you know, if 2016 happened in 2025, the Hillary Clinton crap wouldn't have worked. But, you know, it's a different world now.
Do you think he's going to be able to do what he say he wants to do? I mean, like one of the things that the guy called him was a Stalinist. I was like, oh, you are you. It's like, what the hell, man? And it gets across a certain level of desperation if you have to go to that lens. If you're comparing the guy to like a Nazi, and you're comparing him to David Duke, and you're comparing him to Stalinist and all this other stuff, and you're like, what are you saying?
Well, no one would. I think the city would look fine, festooned with, you know, hammer and sickle flags all over the place, and quotes from Lenin and Mao. I do. I like the aesthetic. I like the politics, but that's not what this guy.
That's not Mandani. Yeah, that's not Mandani.
He's just a McGovern Democrat.
Do you think he's going to be able to do what he says he wants to do in New York is the question. Because from my point of view, if he's successful, he sets a model. If he fails,
he can accomplish some things. So his big campaign promise was to freeze the rent. He can absolutely do that because he appoints the members of the rent control board. So that is something he can do. He wants the bus to be free. That's a little complicated because he's going to have to do some horse trading with the MTA budget, which is controlled in Albany. It wouldn't really be that expensive, actually. So, because first of all, half of New Yorkers don't pay the fare anyway. So
really,
yeah. So it's kind of like 43% or something. Not to mention, most people on the bus they had a free transfer from the subway anyway. So it's kind of like, you know, when you subtract all the costs of maintaining the payment system, you know, policing non-payment, like having people check, you know, the tickets and stuff like that. It's like you're gonna have some reduced costs there. He could do that. He could do that.
that's a good point. It's more expensive to police it as opposed to just make it free.
Yeah, I mean, Staten Island Ferry's been free for years, and it seems to be doing fine. Then there's, and I think there's the grocery thing. You know, that's going to be more challenging just because groceries really are a low profit. They're a low margin business. There's that one guy from Gatsinakis, the guy who owns Gristedes, who's been all over right-wing media talking about Mandani bringing fascism to New York because he wants to have, well, everyone hates Gristedes. go, like take your shitty stores and leave New York. We have plenty of other
Yeah.
ones. It's the most overpriced one. But like, honestly, I think he could accomplish that. Put in like a pilot grocery store, partner with an existing store in all of the 5 boroughs, and just see how that goes. I don't think it'll really move the needle, but he could do that. Where things get complicated are he wants to expand the pre-K education, which we know gets really good results for good outcomes for kids, and it really helps the safety of the city, and it really lets parents breathe easier when they need to go to work and stuff. But that's expensive, so that money has to come from Albany, and from Governor Hochul. So she's not inclined to spend that money. So she's a right-wing Democrat.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Is there a way for the mayor to raise money himself in New York?
There is. I don't know if he would have to. One big advantage of the fact that he is being attacked by the real estate interests and by Wall Street is that he doesn't owe them a marker when he becomes president. When he becomes mayor. So he could say, all right, well, as long as they don't shoot me, it'll be fine. They might shoot him, but they basically, he can ignore them. It looks like, so there's 3 loci, we've talked about this before, but there's 3 loci of power in the city. I mentioned 2, right? There's the financial business, the New York Stock Exchange, and there's real estate, like the Michael Bloomberg sector. Then there's the NYPD, the cops. So it looks like you really can't govern without at least one locus of power. Looks like he's choosing the NYPD, ironically. He's made some noise about keeping the sitting NYPD commissioner, who's a billionaire who inexplicably decided she wanted to run the police department. He's talking to her about staying on. I don't think the police are doing a particularly good job these days, but it looks like he's decided, I've got to make the cops feel good, and he's going to promise them a raise. So basically, that's how that's going to look. So he could raise taxes on the wealthy. If it were me, I've always had this idea: stock market transaction fee. Slap $20-$30 on each transaction. You're going to have the money pouring in overnight. You won't know what to do with it all. It'll be your biggest problem. It's figuring out where to put it. So that's he can definitely raise taxes. He's going to have to get something signed off from Albany, but there's definitely ways to raise, to do that.
The stock market transaction fee I guess what I'm asking, well, look, the cop thing makes sense to me. It's like, I need to keep myself safe, so I want cops to be happy.
Well, you do need cops. New York is one of the few cities where you're like, yeah, they do something. Right? They're not just sitting around bored, behind a shrub and a shrub covering the stop sign, waiting to write you a ticket. They actually do work,
So I guess what I'm asking is does he need permission from Albany for the stock transaction tax?
It's a good question. It's possible. There's debate about that. It would have to be lawyered. But I don't know. Maybe not. But and it might go through Albany or it might not. The governor would certainly not approve of it. On the other hand, her locus of power is not Wall Street. Her locus of power is conservative Democrats upstate. So maybe, this is going to really be, and I'd say his biggest challenge, this is where his age comes in. He's 33 years old, and, this is about horse trading and negotiating. And, I don't know. There are some people to whom that comes naturally. For me, I'm good at it now at the age of 61. It's because I've spent a lot of time with human beings, and I've learned how to get people to see things from other people's point of view and try to see okay, how can I give them what they need so that I can get what I need? I don't know if he has that, and I don't know if he's going to have a team around him that can conduct those negotiations. But that will be the key to a successful mayoralty, is establishing a good relationship with Albany and with Governor Hochul in particular. If he can do that, he can govern successfully. He's going to have to find out what is it that scratches Hochul's itch and give it to her.
No, you know what scratches Hochul's itch. It's like you got to show some leg, man. He's gonna have to show some leg.
He's a good-looking man.
He's a good-looking guy. He's a good-looking guy. You know, it's like, hey, can we go out to dinner? No, I'm being vulgar. I'm sorry. I look. I hope he's successful. I want him to be successful. And maybe you're right. I guess you know. I guess
City council will be on his side. He is ideologically. They're very left-wing.
Yeah. I guess I could keep thinking that these people hate him, and maybe I'm too shaped by what took place in the Sanders race, and that colors my point of view too much. But I think you're right. He will have to find some way to deal with Albany.
And there's a good Sanders analogy here. This is like, Sanders, where did he start? Mayor of Burlington, Vermont, a very liberal city. New York City is a very left-wing city, and it's become more left-wing in recent years. The landlords have gone absolutely crazy post-pandemic. And they're going to pay.
So the landlords are going to pay.
They're going to pay. Yeah, they're going to pay. Honestly, if there was a revolution and they were all strung up and hung from lampposts, and no one would cry. No one.
It's that bad.
Yeah.
It's like it's that over the top.
Yeah.
But the landlords themselves have to also pay rents, right? I mean, have the rents for the landlords gone up?
Not really. They're the property owners. I mean, what do you mean? They're not renting.
For example, okay, that's fair. I was thinking that the landlords themselves still
claim their expenses have gone up. There's no credible reason to believe that to be true.
Especially not to that degree. I remember in Silver Spring, because New York, DC is insanely expensive. Not as bad as New York, obviously, but bad from my point of view, especially coming from Richmond, when you get an apartment for $800, $900. You can be living in a damn good place for like $1,300 a month. And so that doesn't exist in DC. That doesn't exist in DC. If you were paying $2,000 for a single studio, you're doing well. And so I think my place ended up being $1,900, but that was in a bad neighborhood. If you're trying to be in the city, it's just through the roof. When I was in Silver Spring, because many people live outside of DC, they live in like Maryland and or deep in Virginia, that type of thing. And they tried to raise the rent 15%, and nothing had changed. Like they literally tried to just we're now going to charge X amount, which is 15% more than what you were paying for the year before last.
Yep.
What's changed? Nothing at all. This is just what we're doing.
Right.
Now, I don't know if anybody purchased that place for that. But anyway, you look at it, I guess my point is, I understand what you mean when you point out that these rents that go up, and they seem to be unconnected to anything happening, short of we just want to make more money because we think we can make more money. And the person either pays it or leaves. And we believe that the next person who comes in will get it at that price point. I mean, it's just astonishing. I mean, are there that many? Yeah, it's just astonishing.
Well, I think it's a bubble too. I mean, there's a lot. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. Like right now, my landlord is fighting with me about lease renewal. Now, the thing is, my building's half empty. So if I leave, they're like, okay, well, that's another empty unit. And part of the problem is they can deduct the cost of that empty unit from their taxes. So basically, the taxpayers are subsidizing their warehousing of units. In my opinion, warehousing ought to be illegal. Certainly, look, property rights in a capitalist society are important. But there should be a rule against keeping an apartment vacant for year after year after year, or a storefront vacant year after year after year, when you could rent it if you charged less. And it should be, that just shouldn't be permitted. If it happens at beyond a certain point, that property should be seized by the city and used however the city feels like. But that's not happening. But it's a bubble. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there was an economic collapse where basically it turns out this whole house of cards, when it all comes clear, like the landlords are just basically overextended. They're all leveraged to the hilt. It's all a game. They're trying to create the illusion of scarcity in a city that doesn't have any actual scarcity to try to keep their numbers high. It's a cartel. It's like, it's like the De Beers cartel. Diamonds don't really have much inherent worth. They just don't release many of them.
As you say, the landlords are going to pay. We're going to close it on that. I love that. They're going to pay. I love that. Ted Rall. Ted Rall is political cartoonist, syndicated columnist, host of TMI with Manila Chan. Also, Deprogram with John Kiriakou?
That's right.
Nailed that shit. Hot damn. Deprogram with John Kiriakou.
Get better from that cold, Jamal.
Well, yes, I know, right? You guys come on at 10 o'clock. Deprogram, when does that come on?
Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 5 p.m.
Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 5 p.m. Check him out. Ted Rall is fantastic. John Kiriakou is fantastic. Vanilla Chan is magnificent. Thank you, my man. You be safe.
Thanks, Jamal. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. We're going to go from one damn good guest to another damn good guest. Man himself, Michael Maloof. Maloof is a former senior security policy analyst in the Office of Secretary of Defense, author, regular contributing analyst on RT and other media outlets. He has nearly 30 years in the federal service and the U.S. Department of Defense. How you doing, my man? You doing okay today?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. A bit under the weather, but I'm okay. I'm plugging along.
Get over it. Get over it.
I'm trying to not even acknowledge that it exists. That's where I'm at, right?
Good. Be strong.
Give me your take on what is going on with Trump right now. And to be specific, Trump was in office, apparently is not releasing anything on Epstein. I find that to be a betrayal. And people are completely confused as to why Trump is not releasing anything on Epstein. We're bewildered by why he's not releasing anything on Epstein. We are completely in the dark on why he's not releasing anything on Epstein.
Well, there's just nothing there,
Right. And then you get this back and forth on the issue of Ukraine, where Donald Trump is caught on CNN saying, where is it? Saying this. He's saying this. Man of peace. He's holding a dove and a rose in one hand and the other.
Putin, I said, if you go in to Ukraine, we'll bomb down in Moscow. I'm telling you, I have no choice. The public wants it. The public. So he goes like, I don't believe you. I said, he said, no way. And I said, way. And then he goes like, I don't believe you. But the truth is, he believed me 10%. And I told you this, he believed me 10%. Then I'm with President Xi of China. But I said the same thing to them. I said, if you go into Taiwan, I'm going to bomb Beijing.
So he is telling Putin, and I love, Putin says, no way. He says, I say, way. No way. And he says, you only need to believe him 10%. And 10% is enough to prevent them from doing stuff. This is nonsense, right?
Well, it's just his bombastic way. We've seen that. I mean, when he first started negotiating with Kim Jong-un, if you recall, it was Rocket Man. My nuclear button is bigger than yours. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's all bombastic. It's irresponsible. We don't normally associate heads of state talking that way, but this is quite an unconventional guy, and I think people have come to accept that he shoots from the hip, and he's it's ready fire aim in his case, but in the end it's to seek leverage and gain a negotiating position so that they can come to terms. At least he throws something out. You throw something against the wall, you see what sticks.
I'm glad you said that. So this is same Donald Trump.
He hasn't changed.
Same Donald Trump right here. And listen to what he says about Putin.
It's very nice. That was a war that should have never happened, and a lot of people are dying, and it should end. And I don't know, we get a lot of bullshit thrown at us by Putin. You want to know the truth? He's very nice all the time, but it turns out to be meaningless.
What's wild about that is that Trump is the one that is spewing bullshit. Putin has been consistent all the way through in regards to what he wants and his expectations. He's said it over and over. He's made speeches about it. And the entirety of the Russian government has been on the same page. And for whatever reason, Trump believes that whatever rando deal that he comes up with, despite the fact that, just to point something else out, he has no cards. So Russia has been yesterday fired 700 drones. The day before that, 500. The day before that, 500. And they're producing enough to do that every day going forward. Combine that with this fact of reality, which is the reason why Trump stopped sending weapons in the first place. The U.S. only has 25% of the Patriot missiles intercepted needed for Pentagon's military plans. So how is the United States going to affect any will at all on the issue of Ukraine, considering Russia is producing enough drones and missiles to have just ungodly numbers flying every day, hitting targets all over the place. And the U.S. doesn't have the interceptors necessary. And even if they did, in no way could stand a match for that many drones in the air at once.
Well, once again, Trump is sounding bombastic, but frankly, Putin is speaking in the case of Ukraine from a position of strength.
Yeah. Yeah, but can the U.S. Oh, I think you're frozen. I still there, Mike? I'm still there. Come back to me. Come back. Come back. They are. Repeat that for me. You're frozen for a little bit. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I said that Trump is being his bombastic self, but Putin is speaking from a position of strength. He knows that U.S. stockpiles are limited. The allies certainly cannot mount a consistent offensive against him to supply Ukraine. So all he has to do is wait them out, and that's what he's doing. It's that death by 1,000 cuts routine, and now he's beginning to put on the pressure, increasing pressure. That is, Putin's beginning to put on the pressure more and more and more, as long as the Ukrainians are continuing to resist. What I noted the other night on RT, for example, was that Trump was once again saying just what he said about Putin, but what Putin needs to do is get on that secure line directly and speak to Trump directly and just inform him that the hundreds of drones going toward Kiev was in response to the attacks that Kiev made on civilians just at a beach site here the other day. And Trump's not getting that information. It's clear because it's not convenient for his intelligence community to advise him of that side of the story. They're very Ukraine oriented. Yeah. And as I've pointed out repeatedly, that this will continue. You've got the CIA, UK, MI6, and the Israeli Mossad joined at the hip to help the Ukrainians in this endeavor, and that's why you see Russia reacting the way they are toward the entire West now, and I also think the relationship with Israel is going to begin to sour here very soon, if it hasn't already begun, because of that.
Whose relationship? You mean Russia's or the U.S.'s?
Russia's relationship with Israel.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to sour, and more and more because of this assistance that's being given to Ukraine by the Israelis. They know. They saw the pattern. They saw the pattern of the attacks into Iran by the Mossad and how they were imaged into Ukraine, and it was identical. Bringing things in all electronically devised and automatic, and the Ukrainians don't have that sophistication. They needed outside help. They needed also the targeting. So they needed the deceptions, and that's what CIA, MI6, and Mossad gave to them.
It's also, that's super interesting to me, because from my point of view, God, okay, I want to go in two areas. One, from my point of view, and I want to get your take on it, Russia's pursuing its aims to win the war and pursue unconditional surrender because it realized that it has no partner in the United States in regards to trying to end and close the war. That in the very beginning, they might have been open to having some kind of deal. But when it became clear that what a US president had no capability of making an actual deal that the Russians were willing to accept, because a US president can't accept that they've lost in Ukraine. And so what Russia has been doing hasn't been responding to this or that. They've been pursuing a strategic plan to win it, with the drone swarms now being this means to decimate Ukrainian military's capability on the front lines and behind the front lines, and pretty much hitting anything that they want to hit because they have so much production. Give me your take on that, because it sounds like what you think is that, from your point of view, Russia is responding. I don't think Russia is responding at all. I think they're pursuing an objective.
Well, the agenda that Russia has, as I see it, is to force Ukraine to the table. But they're getting that continuing to get the Western assistance, and Ukraine continues to use the equipment and wage the conflict, knowing that they're not going to win anything. They're not going to regain their lost territories, yet they continue fighting. And for what reason? So what Putin has been doing he doesn't want to take over Ukraine, although in the end he may have to set up a buffer, to protect the Federation itself from attacks. But that's going to be hard to manage and to police if he were able to do so, or even wanted to do so. But the reality is that he has been his swarms, his drone swarms, have been in response to attacks, and then they stop, and then you see the Ukrainians doing it again. Every time he stops, it's like there's a ceasefire, a mini ceasefire, but yet Ukraine continues the conflict. So he's just going to double down. He's just doubling down every single day, increasing that pressure, retaking more and more territory, which is costing the Ukrainians more and more as they plod along. And the question is, to what end? It's not going to be a good ending for the Ukrainians and the United States. And this is where in the United States you have MAGA so split up right now because of this. They don't want continuous war, but yet yet Trump has become taken over by the not only the military industrial people, but also the neocons that surround him, his contributors. And that's certainly the case with Israel. And it just given the fact that the neocons have him in their vice now, is something that we're right back to where we were with Trump 1, and this is not a good development.
But you don't think this is the issue of an American president being an American president? Like, there's a certain amount of hubris, a certain amount of I am master of the universe built into him, and it is hard to. It takes a very strong person to be able to pull away from that, and Trump's ego is out of control in general.
Well, there's that, but also there are constraints placed upon him. He can only do so much. I mean, you can be a leader. What?
What are the constraints?
The restraints will be whoever his major contributors are. Look, he's already in the case of Israel, for example, he has vowed to take back to recognize the West Bank as part of Israel. Why? Well, not just because Netanyahu would like that, but Marian Adelson, a major contributor, insisted on it.
Yeah.
And he needs that, continues to need that support. And now you have the top guy who has been involved in killing so many thousands upon thousands of Palestinians, having the audacity to offer Trump's name to be for the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yes.
I mean, it's so totally bizarre. I can't get beyond that. It's just that image. Here you have the guy that seeks to kill off an entire group of people, offering another killer to be the Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, there's something diabolical about that. I mean, you wonder what universe are we living in?
I mean, a lot of this stuff is farce. I mean,
what's crazy, but it's real in their minds. You see, this is
do you really think it's real in their minds? Like, do you think
they're playing their game? They're at another level, and you know they're disregarding the realities on the ground. They are in their own orbit, and they are totally ignoring what the will of the people of the United States wanted. And
3 a.m. between him and his God. Do you really think Netanyahu doesn't know he's committing a genocide?
Yes, I don't think he cares. It's he has convinced himself about his messianic, his messianic way of conducting himself to justify the killings and the genocide that he's been committing.
Yeah.
And it's the only way he can justify what he's doing. God wills it. Okay, if God wills it, let's do it. You Crusaders used to say that before they raid the caravans, you know?
No. I think he
If
looks
God
at it
wills
as,
it, let's go. We're good to go.
if he can create his greater Israel, then in 100
That's
years, all of this doesn't matter. Kind of like in the U.S. It's like, well, we've
That's
murdered all the Native Americans.
It's the
400
ends.
years
The
ago.
ends justify the means, rather than the means justifying the ends.
You pointed out, you say you believe the Russian relationship with Israel is going to spoil. That for all intents and purposes, could spoil.
Yeah. You see, Putin, though, does have some leverage over Netanyahu, even though years back they had a personal relationship, and they probably still do to a point, but that may have soured somewhat because of what's been going on. But the leverage that Putin has is that he still has a lot of Russian Jews who would probably like to immigrate to Israel. So that's something he holds over Netanyahu. And so that's why that relationship remains, and he doesn't want to bust that up.
But Russia has to also know that Israel is just a platform for the U.S. And either whether it was in Syria, whether it's in Iran, all of these countries that Russia had a relationship with, Israel is doing everything in their power to destroy. I mean, they were backing ISIS in Syria. Russia has to know that these things are contrary to its own interests.
Well, Trump just took off the terror list one of the top Al Qaeda guys who now happens to be a leader of Syria. That's my
yes, Sajulani.
So yeah, it goes on. We created Al Qaeda basically, and they've always been and along with ISIS, have always tended to be an instrument of the Israelis. They have. I mean, there are instances during the Syrian civil war where wounded ISIS members would go into Israel for medical care.
Yes,
that's documented.
Yes,
that's documented. So I mean, they are instruments, and the same into Iran. You had you had attacks in Iran by ISIS elements who had blended in with the local Sunni tribes and attacked the Iranians, and there were some attacks on and in fact there was one attack during a very prominent ceremony, I believe, commemorating the death of Soleimani, in which there was an outright attack just by this group. So you have ISIS elements as well as the MEK. That's always been anti-Iranian regime. So and Israel has plugged into that.
I want to ask you something else because I've been somewhat fascinated by it. Ever since the 12-day war, it seems like Hamas is more effective, weirdly enough. And so is Ansar Allah. Ansar Allah just sunk 2 ships and made a bunch of promo videos after sinking the ships. it's the funniest thing in the world to me.
It's a recruiting video.
Yeah, it's the wildest. It's like they're running around with guns, and then the ship, sinks. And then in the other one, they blow up the ship. They seem to have gotten far more effective at doing that. And so has Hamas. The death toll for Israelis have seemed to have spiked over the course of the last month, especially after the war. And I guess from your take, do you think that those things are related to one another?
Well, it's all related. Of course, everything is related. There's nothing acting independently. It's the continuous pressure here or there. It's war by attrition. It's what we're seeing. When one side is stopped for now, the other side another element kicks in just to keep up the pressures. And we're going to see it continuous. It'll be a continuous thing. And again, it's something that we remarked before, but the Israelis are totally silent on any damage that's occurring to their facilities because they don't want to have the publicity, the extent of the damage that both Iran and what these ballistic missiles from the Ansar Allah is doing to Israel itself. But it's happening. And I think a lot of that is also to cover up what's going on internally inside of Israel right now. And that is the potential for another civil war, because you now have the ultra-Orthodox that are beginning to rise up against being drafted, and they're fighting it. And so it's creating a real schism within a real separation within the country itself. And then you have the issue of the settlers versus any of the Palestinians or even the IDF. I mean, these are radicalized, armed people, and they have been known to have battles with the IDF itself. So we're going to be seeing we're going to probably see an increase in that.
Why do you think Netanyahu is in the DC? Some people say that he's there in order to try to convince Trump to back a war with Iran, which is mind-blowing to me. Because, look, they can try to sell all they want that they won that war. But the reality of it is, as I keep pointing out, the purpose of a war is not to kill people, not typically. Killing people is a means to an end. It's not the objective in the conflict. And Donald Trump had to get involved in order to protect Israel in this case, where effectively Israel's economy was coming apart. They were out of weapons. All of those things were effectively taking place. They couldn't keep going. Iran could have kept going. Iran stopped because #reasons. But I guess my thing is, why is he here? Is he really here in order to push Trump to back his war with Iran again? Is he here for some other reason in regards to strategize on how to go after Lebanon, strategize how to screw over the Palestinians? Why is he here?
I think his goal is regime change in Iran. He's under pressure, internal pressure, to do just that. And that's my read on what he's trying to do. He's trying to lay the foundation for the next stage. And he needs Trump to go along with it. And the fact that there's even a consideration of selling B-2s to Israel, what does that tell you? And you haven't heard a denial from Trump yet. He hasn't poo-pooed that. And yet, and we're hearing too that Israel wants to take back Tripoli in northern Lebanon, which is part of Syria, in addition to wanting the southern part of Lebanon. I mean, this is all part of the greater Israel concept. So that's why you see the Israelis bombing right now inside of Syria for that very reason.
Just be clear, Tripoli is part of Libya.
Well, there's also a Tripoli in Lebanon, in northern Lebanon.
Oh, okay.
It's
Stand
Sunni
corrected.
controlled. Yeah, there's a Tripoli in Libya. I agree with you, but there's also a Tripoli in Lebanon.
Lebanon.
Yeah, it's under Sunni control.
There's nothing to stop him. I mean, the Lebanese government.
Well, the Lebanese can't do it. No, of course not.
Yeah.
But the only way they can stop him is try to persuade the United States to tell them to tone it down. But Trump is a virtual puppet of Netanyahu today. He has turned into the puppet, and for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is the deep state connection. As I said earlier, you have CIA, MI6, Mossad joined at the hip. On the one hand, you have the Israeli lobby, you have the defense lobby, and also the contributors, the Jewish contributors to the campaign. Marion Adelson is a prime example of that. So Trump is not his own person when it comes to Israel.
Has that surprised you?
No. Every president succumbs to that because they have to do the bidding of their contributors.
Do they?
Yeah.
I mean, Trump is Trump is nearly 80 years old. Trump may be dead and in the ground in a few years. What is the constraint?
Yeah, but he's thinking ahead. He's thinking about Trump International. He's thinking about his sons. So he's going to do things. And the question also he wants to push the whole Abraham Accords. This is his scheme. But for example, will the Saudis go along with it? I've been talking to a few other folks, and they think like I do that Saudi Arabia is not going to come around because they haven't agreed. The Israelis have not agreed to a two-state solution, and
Right.
That's why you may see the Saudis hedge when it comes to appeals from Trump to do the same thing. I think in the weeks and months to come, you're going to see the Gulf Arab states, particularly and including Saudi Arabia, are not going to go with the Abraham Accords, which is what Netanyahu really, really wants. And he needs that for stability in the region on the one hand, but he also needs it to show strength in his own country and to put down any opposition that he might have. But I think that opposition is growing more and more.
I mean, Trump's I think he's calling it Abraham Shield now, effectively ethnically cleanses Gaza. I mean, they have come to the conclusion where Netanyahu is saying, well, we're just pushing, we're letting people leave. They don't have to leave. They can stay here and die.
Well, when you're being shot at, even when you try to get food, you can't get the food. But when you do get whatever is there, you're getting shot at, and then you're forced to move from one location to another every day. You sort of get the message, don't you?
Well, Netanyahu that says that's encouragement. That's not forcing people out.
It might be an encouragement, but you have Ben Gvir and Smotrich saying take them all out. Let God sort them out. I mean,
I guess that's kind of a point, though. But that's part of the Abraham Shield that Donald Trump is kind of pushing, and Trump and
he's
Netanyahu
bought into it. But who's who's strong enough to stand up to that? You can have all the international organizations condemning it, but they're feckless. They're useless. We are losing the international. Look at the broader thing. The mechanisms that we set up to prevent war have become meaningless.
Yes,
we're in a free fall right now when it comes to what mechanisms do we have to stop the war that we're seeing, the genocide that we're seeing. Look, the Israelis just this morning killed another 47 Palestinians. All they wanted to do is get food. Who's stopping that?
they've been doing
I can't
100 a
stop
day.
it.
100 a day. That's what they've been tracking, 100 a day, and said to themselves, "Hey, isn't it great that we've gotten the world to accept 100 dead people per day?"
You become numb to that over time, but those are lives. Those are, like individual lives, like you and me, and the viewers, and if that's the way that it's just like you take the spray can of Raid and knock out a whole ant's nest. That's
Yeah.
basically what it. And you don't think about it. It becomes impersonal as a consequence, and that's the mindset you're seeing today with the leadership in Israel, the United States.
I nurse my rage with the hopes that at some point Israel will pay for this at some point. They will pay for it.
I don't know who's going to be in charge of the new international order, because you're going to need something like that. That's why you're seeing the creation of this multipolar world order. People want a different. They want
Model.
to change, and they want something that's different than what's been going on, because they haven't been. The Western institutions have not been responsive to the needs of the developing nations. And now we see that they control the money system. They control and they use it. They have weaponized the money system and the dollar. And you see what Trump has been advocating now and putting tariffs against members of BRICS automatically. I mean, they're going to come along anyway in spite of that. Yeah, they'll just trade among themselves. They just won't trade with the United States. It's
Michael
fine.
Maloof. Always appreciate you, man. Michael Maloof, former senior security policy analyst in the Office of Secretary of Defense, author, regular contributing analyst to RT and other media outlets. He has nearly 30 years of federal service in the U.S. Department of Defense. Michael, you have a fantastic day, man. Thank you for this.
You too. Thank you.
Have a good one. Be safe. All right. Michael Maloof, always appreciate him. Always appreciate his point of view. I love pushing back and having a tug of war with him. I see my other guest in the background. Let me bring her in. Sarah Bils. How you doing today, Sarah? You doing okay? I am doing all right. Sarah Bils, former U.S. Navy veteran and current editor for DD Geopolitics. I have been singing your praises all week. You and Esteban.
I haven't done anything.
Well,
I really took most of the week off.
Well, you guys do good work. And it's funny. I cover news all day. Like I am reading it constantly. Even if I'm standing in the line for Taco Bell, I'm reading news while I'm waiting on my beef taco. And I get into this thing where I don't know what is. It blurs after a while. Like, so for example, a guest may bring up a story and I'll be like, oh, I know that story. Or if I go on somebody's show, I don't really need to, whatever they bring up is something that we could talk about because I just cover this stuff constantly. I really get into this crisis of not knowing what to cover. And every show within the, let's say, going from, I guess, 4 a.m. on the East Coast time. But for the first 4 hours leading into the show, I am at my wit's end trying to figure out, what do I talk about today?
I couldn't do it. I don't know how you do it. I have no idea how you do it. I couldn't do it. I don't have the patience.
Well, it just, at a certain point, you're forced to make a choice. Like, the closer you get to the show. Like,
I
it's
would
like,
just wing it. That's what we've started doing. We've started just pulling a bunch of media and then just showing it and then just going from there.
no,
That's
because I
been, like,
need to
the
be able to
last 3
package it
weeks.
after the fact. And I'm stuck with that part. Because what I realized, you're packaging something. It's kind of like at the radio station. It's like you are bringing on people. You're trying to have really good conversations.
Mhm.
And I don't want the conversation to be scripted. And so it's like you want a starting point and you just kind of go with it. But at the end of it, you have to say, okay, well, what can I call this that's interesting to people after the fact? And hopefully the conversation was interesting where you can sell it. And so it's like when you're setting up the tenor of the show, you at the very least have to have an idea of what I want to talk about with the very specific guests. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, you could do guests and all that. I don't do that.
You don't do guests?
No.
Well, because a guest makes it.
Once in a while we do, but no.
I'm informed by my guests. Like I learn stuff from them.
Yeah.
And it's interesting for me to talk to them. Like Mark, Mark's workable point of view has been probably more right in the political space than I think anybody else has gone back for several years. Even people I disagree with, it helps inform my point of view because my point of view could be wrong. So I don't know. I enjoy it. I enjoy these conversations. I enjoy talking to you. My point of view is informed talking to you, whether I agree with you or not. It's just kind of works that way for me. I want to hit with you. First of all, you guys brought up something exploding in Iraq, and I didn't understand what was happening.
Oh, in Kurdistan or the
Yes.
other? Okay.
Well, it was in Iraq where it was something about the Peshmerga versus.
Yeah, Iraqi Kurdistan.
What is going on with that? I didn't understand what was happening with that.
It's just a bunch of tribal stuff going on, proxy wars, stuff like that. Just important to kind of keep an eye that it doesn't explode outside of Iraqi Kurdistan. It will, but it's something to keep an eye on.
We're saying it will.
It will. I mean, that's what the United States and Israel are going to do. You know, this isn't science rockets. But yeah, so something to keep an eye on.
Why do you think Trump is here? I mean, I'm sorry. Why do you, Jesus Christ, why do I think Trump is here? Why do you think Netanyahu is here?
Oh, in the United States?
Yes.
To get permission, to get the plans in place to strike Iran.
But that didn't work last time.
They don't care. We do a color revolution every 5 years. They don't work. Since when did we stop doing things because they don't work?
They shot their load the first time. Like,
they're
it's
moving
funny.
assets all over the Middle East. I don't know what they're getting ready for, but they're going to bomb Iran. So.
And they know the consequences of it.
I don't know that they care. You guys, like,
how do they not? That's the part that blows me away, right?
That's the thing. Like, people aren't reading the actual ideology behind a lot of these people. Go read Yarvin. They want to completely collapse the system and rebuild it in the image they want to rebuild.
That I get. To be fair, that I get, and so I understand.
They also don't think we should survive. So if we die, we die.
Well, I'm not sure we as a race deserve to survive either. So,
well, they're not part of our race in their own crazy minds. They're elevated above us.
An argument could be made, I'm not going to say it's an ancient alien thing. I used to have conversations with people, and from my point of view, it was like, well, obviously they're going to attack Iran. It's like this just seems obvious.
We went to the Pentagon yesterday. The baby spent hours at the Pentagon. They're going to attack Iran.
I guess my thing is that has always been what the United States has wanted going back for the last 20-something years. And now they have the opportunity to do it. I think from my point of view, though.
You mean attacking Iran is something we wanted to do?
Yeah, we wanted to end
and Donald Trump is like, I need, like, he wants to get these big wins, right? These huge anticipated wins. So something like that, you said the last 20 years, he's always going to be like, I'm going to tie up that loose end that no one else has been able to tie up. I'm going to get it done.
Agreed.
And
they tried. And I strongly suspect, I wish I could be a fly on the wall, but I strongly suspect what they told Donald Trump was, the U.S. doesn't have to have his hands on it. And Trump said, okay.
They're organizing right now to use the B-2s.
Yes.
Israel will be using the B-2s, maybe themselves or with an augmented regiment or something. Yeah, that's what they're negotiating that right now. They've been talking about it. Getting basically the B-2s and a bunch of bunker busters will be under the command of Israel. Are you guys ready for Armageddon?
Yeah, I was about to say, I think we're in a different world on this, though. The U.S., when they tried to do that first attack, they thought, okay, we can smash the Iranian state. And it didn't work. And they activated all of those Mossad agents, all of those CIA agents, all of these people who they had paid. And many of those people have been killed. So even though Iran's Swiss cheese security system, well, they've killed, 700 people, if not more, that were supposed to be associated with Mossad. And you can imagine that a lot of those people were probably innocent. They just got swept up into it. But whatever, that it was something that Iran had to deal with. This is the way they went about dealing with it. So you no longer
dealing with it, though. They're trying to forcefully deport 200,000 people, which is fine, but they're not done dealing with it. I don't know, like, if you think they're all gone, but Iran is a mess. Internally, it's a mess. A mess. These reformists are a mess. The president is a mess. They don't know what they're doing foreign policy wise. They don't know where they fit in. They have no weapons. Even if they got the J-10Cs today, that wouldn't even change a thing. it's I'm sorry, like I don't understand this like weird idealistic vision that Iran is somehow going to magically get air superiority over their own skies. They have no aircraft.
To be fair, I don't think
that they don't have aircraft.
No. I don't think. Okay, people have been talking about the J-10s, and for one, that's not verified.
For one, they can't afford any. Okay, they tried to order 150. See, this is the issue. This is what happened with Russia too. They wanted the Su-35s. Russia and Iran both hesitated because they said, "What happens with the West? What will the West say?" And then they realized Iran won't ever pay for them. So, and the problem isn't that they don't have money. The problem is they don't have foreign currencies, and nobody wants their currencies, and not everybody. Russia doesn't need their oil. And then they went China. Wait, but then they went and tried to order jets from China, and China said, "We don't want oil for jets. We want money." And they said, "Well, then we can't afford a whole fleet. They can't even afford more than a squadron." So they only got 30, and they're not getting them for years. Right. So what do we do between now and then? Hope, pray.
So from my point of view, I didn't have the sense that the J-10s, even if they got them tomorrow, was going to matter for another 5 to 10 years.
They would have the Pakistanis fly them probably, if they got them tomorrow.
Also, wait, say that again? You said they would have the Pakistanis to fly them if they got them?
Fly J-10Cs, yeah.
And they would fly them for Iran?
It would be like NATO flying F-16s for Ukraine. It's the same thing.
Would Pakistan really get involved that way?
And not say anything? Oh, absolutely.
Would you say not say anything? Oh, that's fascinating.
Absolutely.
Would Pakistan give
Iran
a bomb or use a bomb on behalf of Iran if Israel were nuclear?
They wouldn't. I don't think so. Because it would take away. I think they could do the pilot thing covertly, but they can't take away. They can't betray their sponsors that badly. Come on now.
Look, I think Iran does have missile capacity.
100%. I don't worry about Iran attacking Israel. They're able to do a lot of things to Israel, especially now. We have no air defense anywhere in the world.
Right.
But neither do
their
they.
Ability to defend their own
nobody
skies.
has air defense. So who's better off? Is Israel better off, who can actually fly there and shoot actual like surface to ground missiles? Or is it Iran, who can only fire ballistics from maybe mobile platforms inside of the country? I'm sorry, but you don't have control over your own skies. You're dead.
I know, but that goes both ways.
Right, but they have more air defense in Israel, and they also scramble jets to do air defense for Israel. Iran does not have that.
It didn't stop Iran from pounding the shit out of them, though. I guess my thing is this. If, let's say, Iran, and I guess this was why the thing is so wild to me.
Iran can pound the shit out of Israel till it's flat, and it wouldn't matter. Like, we'll still go to war with Iran.
Oh, you mean the United States will go to war with Iran?
Like, one thing doesn't, it's not mutually exclusive. They're not going to say, but we better not bomb Iran because they're going to bomb Israel. You think they give a shit about the people who live in Israel? A little bit more than they care about us, but not that much.
Before, there was like, Israel is a platform, and it's like, yeah, but the people don't know that. So, well, that's on them for not knowing, not knowing that. It's like, it's not about you, man. It's like it's not about your vision.
There are human shields. They're the human shields for American foreign policy. And so, not to give them, put them in a victim placemat, but I mean, it's just.
And you really believe Trump?
Trump is crazy. I'm 100% convinced these people are crazy. Please don't mistake what I'm saying today as that if I want Iran to lose. I think these people are nuts and they're reckless enough to do whatever it takes.
Okay, let me give you my take, and I want to get your take for my take. Trump confused me because from my workable point of view, he just did. Yeah. My workable point of view at the time was, well, the U.S. wants to get further ingratiated into a war. That was my thought. And that I wasn't certain on whether or not Trump was going to use the fact that Israel was taking punishment as a justification to get further involved. So when Donald Trump bombed the nuclear facilities, even though it was theatrical, it was his way of inviting Iran to step onto an escalatory ladder. Iran is like, okay, we will also do our theatrical thing because we want to make balance. But the U.S. could have used that balance as a rationale for further attacks. But Trump didn't do that. Trump turned around and said, all right, it's all gone. Nothing is here, folks. We're good. We're good. Everybody's good. We've destroyed them. We've pounded them into the ground. Now, Israel was singing it for a different tone. Israel was like, well, we've gotten hit. They've moved the nuclear materials, et cetera, meaning they were saying two very different things, as if from the Trump administration standpoint, we don't want to keep doing this. If we were okay with overthrowing the government, if we could do it on the cheap, we were fine with that. We had no issue with that. That was a win. But if it's 20,000 American body bags coming back because Iran says, fuck it, and destroys all of the ships, meaning they look at it as existential and look at it as we have nothing left to lose. We're not being conservative. We're not doing any of this stuff. We're taking down every ship that's nearby. We're taking down every base.
If Iran will never do that. If Iran felt that way, they would have built a bomb.
A state that is in a position of existentiality, I don't know what the hell. Agreed. You have that full agreement on this.
They don't understand it's existential. If North Korea understood this was existential, I'm going to be wiped off the map. And they said, I'm going to build a bomb and I'm not going to say anything. And I'm not going to say anything until I test it. Iran, on the other hand, goes, I'm going to tell the world I'm building a bomb, even though I'm not. I'm going to pretend I might be building a bomb. This is kind of silly. I have no air defense. This is insane. Build the bomb.
Build
the bomb. Build the bomb.
I pushed Burundi on this, and I pushed another woman that I was talking to on this, because I'm like, you guys took the worst of both worlds. You decided we're going to do 60% enrichment, and we're going to scream into the world that that's what we're doing, even though we have no intention of building a bomb.
Exactly. I don't get it. I don't get it. And it has absolutely devastated any deterrence that Iran had. We were warning them leading up to this with True Promise 2. We said that after True Promise 2 happened, myself and Syrian Girl, when I say we, it's mostly myself and Syrian Girl, both agreed. I said, this didn't establish deterrence.
No.
They have got to establish deterrence. Strategic patience is actually going to do the opposite. And it did. Now they have no deterrence, no air defense, and no bomb.
I think so. I do think they have deterrence with the U.S. I don't think they have deterrence.
There's a tiny bit of deterrence, but it only comes from the U.S.'s own inadequacies. It doesn't come from the Iranians' sort of power. Do you know what I mean? It comes from the United States not being able to accomplish what they need to because of themselves. It has nothing to do with Iran stopping them.
Look, I agree with you that the U.S. wants to overthrow the Iranian government.
I don't think they care about that.
I think they do. I think that's been U.S. policy.
I think the coup is done. Pezeshkian is in office. Pezeshkian will be friends with anybody you tell him to. Tell him to be friends with Erdogan. He'll be friends with Erdogan. Tell him to be friends with Aliyev. He was hugging and kissing Aliyev the other day. Like,
that's so brutal. And you're so right. You're so right. Like, did you see the
Ayatollahs? I love the Ayatollah. I love the mullahs. I love all of that. I like theocracy. I'm not against theocracy. I love Iran. The coup was done when the helicopter went down. Sorry.
Did you see the interview between Pezeshkian and Tucker
I didn't even
Carlson?
bother. I heard we've discussed it and people showed me clips. And what I saw, I was like, this is the most boring, undynamic person that should be in power right now. It just was. Yeah. I felt bad for Iran. This person is completely inept. It's like worse than Zelensky at the beginning of the SMO. It's worse than Zelensky. He looks like a deer in the headlights. He literally looks like a man at an old folks' home. Like, I'm just happy to be here.
And small. He looks diminutive. And it sounds like over the course of the interview, it's almost as if he was trying to justify his sovereignty, which is weird. Like, if you listen to somebody like Lavrov is fantastic in interviews.
We don't ask anybody for sovereignty. That's, you know what I mean? Like that's how they are. I don't understand. You get the Ayatollah who's like, we don't give a crap. Like, we're gonna do whatever. Like, and you're like, yes. And then Pezeshkian's like, and you're like, this is not. Imagine being between those two leaders in a country. What kind of discord that kind of creates? What kind of imbalance? What kind of confusion? Now they're investigating Azerbaijan, right? And there's so many pieces moving in this arena now, especially in the Caucasus. Sorry, I have the dog on my lap. But especially in the Caucasus. And if Pezeshkian doesn't know what's going on, God help them. Russia's putting troops into Armenia. Azerbaijan's acting crazy. Like, if Iran doesn't wake up, Iran will be toast.
Okay, I think Iran was suffering under a misconception at first. And I think the misconception was, this is about nukes. And it's like, dude, it's not about nukes, it's about your existence.
Okay.
Which is why I think they were behaving the way they were behaving. Like, because when they increased to 60%, it was purely about sanctions.
Do you think that they thought, okay, we'll increase to 60%, and then
we'll negotiate to get rid of sanctions.
They thought that was going to get them leverage in a way?
Yes.
Okay.
I honestly, because otherwise it makes no sense.
I don't know. So I'm listening. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Well,
but
otherwise it makes no sense. Otherwise, I don't know what the 60% would do.
Right.
Because if you remember, they were willing to go to 3.6% for the JCPOA. And in the very beginning, when Witkoff went over, and Witkoff was like 3.6% is fine, Iran was like, hey, this is great. We're okay with this. And then Trump was like, no enrichment. Because again, at that point, the objective was, we need to get rid of you. And as I kept pointing out, dude, it's not about the nukes, it's about your existence.
Yeah, I think there was a miscalculation on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, they kept
US
treating
and
it
Iran.
about enrichment, and that wasn't the case.
No, and I think that they were a little bit naive, maybe hopeful that that's all that this was about. You know, I think that people really try to give the United States the benefit of the doubt. I think that's why we get a lot of this. I'm not talking about us. I'm talking about international community. That's why we get a lot of this. You know, it'll be different this time. You know, this time it's not, that's why we get a lot of this. I think people really do want to give America the benefit of the doubt. I really do. Even with Mark Bar America on all of that, I do. And that gets them into a lot of trouble. You know, it's like Iran says, I'll enrich to 60. It'll give me leverage and it'll give me a negotiating place. And in a normal scenario, yes, absolutely. We're no longer in a normal scenario. You know, it's interesting. We were talking yesterday. Well, I was listening, actually. I wasn't talking, but they were having a conversation and arguing. Somebody was like, we're in bipolarity and we're never going to get out of unipolarity. And I was like, you know what? I was thinking, I'm like, we're in multipolarity right now.
Yes.
Because, I mean, multipolarity, I think people have this weird idea that multipolarity is going to be like this utopia where we all kind of sing Kumbaya. It's actually going to be the opposite, at least for the beginning. It's going to be anarchy with no no central sort of law, nothing governing everybody. That's literally where we are. We're literally in multipolarity where everybody's fighting for themselves. It's probably going to get worse as the UN really does collapse and stuff like this. So that we're already there. And I think, it really, really is. And I think that leads to a lot of these. I don't want to say smaller because they're not smaller in stature or history or anything, but smaller in the sense of politically smaller. They're not loud. They're not gregarious. They kind of wind up getting swooped up into it. And I also think there's a big misconception about Iran to where we know them as a very pragmatic and very reasonable because we talk to them. That they're very smart people and that
they're pragmatic.
Too pragmatic.
Too reasonable.
Yes.
Too reasonable.
So patient and so reasonable. And the image in the United States in the normies is the complete opposite. They think that these people are frothing at the mouth to kill Americans. And you're like, it couldn't be further from the truth.
No.
It couldn't be further from that. And I think that adds a lot to it. And people always forget that our politicians, they're not like the politicians in other countries. They're not like Lavrov, who has been groomed since college to actually be a diplomat. These are guys that were doing coke and keg stands in law school. Okay, they're regular people. There's nothing special about these people. What do you think distinguishes Pete Hegseth's beliefs about Iran from the guy who lives next door to you? Not really a whole lot.
Nothing.
So the guy next door to you was like, they shout death to America, right? I want to kill people that say that. Well, guess what? That's exactly what Pete Hegseth thinks because that's how short-minded and ridiculous these people are.
Yeah. Yeah, the Iranian thing is frustrating. And I feel like a vulgar American when I'm talking to one.
For sure. Like, we're like, build them up.
Well, because I live here, right? Like this is my mindset. In a military sense, when we think about military, it's you're taking down the ability for them to function.
Right.
And if that means killing people, oh well, that means killing people. And Iran
Right.
was like, yeah, we don't want to do that. We want to have a sanctified war. We want to have a moral war. We want to remain more.
You're not going to get that with Israel and the United States.
No, you're not. And that was the conversation. I was like, why? It's like, what is wrong with you?
And I think
They're blowing up your hospitals.
we've
And they're like,
also-
yeah, but we don't want to resort to that. We want to
We've
remain
sh-
moral.
We've shifted the argument to this point where it's like they can't build the bomb because they're going to bomb us if they build it, which is not why even the government wants them to not build the bomb. That's like another thing that has kind of pushed this thing further along. That's not even in our policy papers. It never says anywhere that anybody thinks from a think tank or anything thinks that Iran will build a nuclear bomb and then hit us with it. They don't want Iran to have a nuclear bomb because they don't want it to have sovereignty and deterrence.
Exactly.
That's all it is. It has nothing to do with them being afraid of bombing us or hurting anybody else. It has to do with they would be able to make choices in their region and their AOR that we don't want them making. We don't want them to be a regional hegemon, and you have to have nukes to be a regional hegemon these days. So there's that.
To what's her name? People don't build a bomb to use it. They build it in order to show the world that
Why
they got
did
it.
North Korea build the bomb?
Yeah,
Look at us to stop effing with them.
Yeah. Which is the only reason you would ever build a bomb. Like nobody wants to use a bomb.
Nobody wants to use. Even Kim doesn't want to use a bomb.
Yeah.
He likes to watch them, but he doesn't want to use them on people. But yeah, nobody wants to use it. Nobody wants to engage like this. I think the United States might, but nobody wants to engage like this. And that's that. I mean, even in the Path to Persia, there's a whole section about why we can't let them have the bomb because of the deterrence they're going to establish, not just to us, but to the region.
Right.
We just don't want them there. I mean, I'm sorry, but even in a not a multipolar world, even in a normal world, Iran is a regional hegemon. Iran is the center of Shia, whether you like it or not. That's just the way that it is. Shiism is not going anywhere. Iran is not. Iran is literally older than Jesus. It's not going anywhere, you know. So it's like, Persia's older than Jesus, but so I don't know. I think that they should just be. I'm just sad about the whole thing, kind of, because
they should have built the bomb. I mean, look. Even if I can win a fist fight, I don't want to really get into a fist fight.
No, but I'm still going to carry a knife.
Yes, exactly. My point.
And I'm still going to throw hands first. But if I get into a situation where I might die, I'm not dying. You know what I'm saying?
I don't even want to be in this situation, is my point. Meaning Iran got into the skirmish. And yeah, you can win that skirmish and you can flatten Israel. Okay, fair enough, you could do it. But how many people are you going to lose doing it? And if you had a nuke, would they even contemplate going after you? And if that answer is no, if I had a nuke, they wouldn't dare come after me. Okay, then you've just avoided a fist fight. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's not about you being able to win a fight. They're considering that to be deterrence. And they're dealing with people who are irrational. As you pointed out, they don't give a shit if they flatten Israel. I mean, and I remember I used to have conversations with people like, but they know Iran is going to hit them, right? Like, they know that they're going to get flattened, right? It's like, oh, well. It's like, what do you mean, oh, well? It's a country of 8 million people.
Yeah,
versus a country of 90 million.
Is worth 3,000 Americans, but 3,000 Americans aren't worth anything to these people. So what's 3,000 times 0? It's still 0. Like, we're not worth anything to these people. The only good that the Israelis serve, I'm talking about the machine and not me, obviously, is that they hold the land.
Yes.
They hold on to that land by sitting on it. That's the usefulness of Israelis to American government, American political.
Break up any notion of an Arab unity.
I mean, even when it's first started, when the 12-day war first started, I mean, I didn't really engage, but I did hear Israelis that say, "Look, we're fighting another war for America. This is your war." And I mean, it's not totally, but there's some truth to that. They're like, "Why are we fighting your war?" I'm like, they are a little bit. They kind of are, in a way.
Well,
stepped in,
it
obviously.
Just dovetails. Our policies just dovetail. I mean, they want to create greater Israel. This kind of
just works because it works with the Abraham Accords. I heard you talking about that with the guest before me. And I'm just going to put this out there, a little tinfoil hat-ism, because I like to do that on your show. But Jeffrey Epstein. Okay? Jeffrey Epstein famously talked about him being close friends with MBS. There's also records of him being close friends with Syrian businessmen who were anti-Assad.
Really?
There's also very close ties to Qataris. There's also, I just started looking into this. I'm not an Epstein person. I never go down those rabbit holes because they're too dark. I don't like the human trafficking conspiracies. It's too much for me. So I just started looking into the business side and not the who's who. Yeah, and there's records of his private planes being in all the Gulf countries or near in various times. He's bragged about how close he is with MBS. Now we do know he embellishes, but let's just say they were even friends. They're all okay. So now we get to where we're at now, right? We're trying to expand the Abraham Accords with this Abraham Shield business. We know that.
Oh, you think they have files and pictures and video?
Could you imagine? Now let's think. You're a Gulf sheikh or a Gulf leader. You say Prince MBS, Mohammed bin Salman. You say, remember those tapes? They'll go away. Everything will go away. It'll all be clean. You got to normalize. Now, this is. Now, I'm not saying this is. I'm just saying they're very hypothetical. The reason why these people are even in power is to keep the West inside of those countries. It's literally a minority leader over a majority country that usually dislikes them, at least, if not hates them, and is on the brink of revolt.
Right.
Could you imagine if these tapes got out? If there was a tape in existence that compromised any of these very high-level politicians in the Gulf states, the place would erupt because it would be a whole, hypocritical thing.
I don't know.
What about the timing with the Epstein stuff? Why did it happen when BB's literally in the plane on the way to Washington?
I don't know why Trump wouldn't disclose what's going on with these.
Yeah, I have no idea.
I have no idea at all. I'm just completely bewildered by it.
Americans are very, very short-sighted with this Epstein thing. Is they very, very hyper-focused on America and how it affected Americans. I'm like, you guys, this is an international blackmail ring. Yeah. This wasn't just Americans on that island. He was talking to Prince Andrew at minimum. So even the lay person knows he was talking to the royal family of Britain. Who else do you think? It was obviously in touch with the highest ranking people of Israel. So it's an international blackmail ring. It's an international human trafficking ring. Who is usually involved in human trafficking? I don't know. The Gulf states? Who covered up the human trafficking in Qatar? Pam Bondi, when they were building FIFA Stadium.
Oh, good point. Good point. She had a financial connection with
Susie Wild also ran cover for this human trafficking in Qatar. And Kash Patel. Weird. All the people that just made Epstein disappear all have ties to Qatar. And two were officially, by their own admission, there to cover up the human trafficking allegations. And now they're covering up another set of human trafficking. Isn't it great?
That's smart. Yeah, that's smart.
This is why I don't go down these rabbit holes.
I mean, somebody has to go down those rabbit holes. I mean, and I don't mean that poorly. I just mean it in the sense of these connections do exist. And when you're stuck with a situation where the government is asking you to swallow just absurdity. They made the point of saying that there were thousands of kids that were being trafficked. Epstein's victims have come out and said there were thousands of girls that were there, or hundreds of girls that were there just being trafficked constantly. They were saying we were raped constantly. And you get Acosta saying that Epstein was intelligence. And considering George Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell's dad. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, this seems to be an intelligence operation by Mossad. Let's say Acosta wasn't wrong, that Epstein was intelligence. Okay, well, that's pretty grotesque. I mean, there was a document that came out the other day that was showing Epstein turn evidence in Wall Street.
I saw that.
And that they effectively let him just keep going with what he was doing for 10 more years.
Yeah, and now, I mean, it's clear that he was some sort of patsy, but now it's very much like, well, we could just put all the sins on Epstein. He was just a weird guy, and he's gone. Yeah. And now the case is gone, and so are all of our sins.
What is Bondi's?
And people are like, this is how they get us. They get us into these arguments about stuff that doesn't matter. It does matter. But if they're they get you off on these weird little arguments. Why? Because you think Trump's on the list? I'm like, I don't care. Like what? Like, you know what I mean? Or they're like, the new phrase is, why are you worried about something you can't control?
Okay, well, that's well, fuck's sake, man.
Should we just
If
let
that's the
all
case, why
of
are we here?
it like,
Yeah.
but like, so it's this very weird mental gymnastics. But I think that this is much bigger than people, and people already think it's big, but I think they think it's big for the wrong reasons. What happened to the
When you
victims is horrible.
goes
They
heavy
deserve,
into this.
yeah, they deserve justice. They absolutely do. But that's where you get bogged down. They get you bogged down in the emotionality of it because it's horrible. It's dark.
Yeah.
It's violent. But there are tangible political moves. Why do you think they even did it? Just to have sex with kids? That's not why they blackmailed people. It was supposed to be a compromising position so they could use it against them later. And now they're gone. So what did they do with all of that leverage they had? How did they use it? They spent it somewhere. They weren't going to get rid of it for free. Where did
It's
they
like, hey,
spend it? Let's see what happens with the Abraham Accords. Don't forget, the Gulf states handed billions over to the Trumps. Billions.
do you think Saudi Arabia is going to end up being part of this?
100%.
accord?
100%. Witkoff is now saying definite Syria, obviously.
Well,
Most
yeah,
likely, most likely Lebanon, because
Yeah,
they don't
right.
have a choice. And
Right.
and Qatar.
Yeah, Lebanon can't even fire a shot in anger
Mm-mm.
of an occupier. Like they're being invaded, and the military can't even, you know.
They have ISIS
not
now.
slip a shot in
They have
anger.
ISIS
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
ISIS, whatever they are. American or Western-backed proxy terrorists, whatever they are. We're calling
Well,
them
yeah.
ISIS.
You mean in Syria that effectively
And
we're going to
Lebanon.
have?
We found them in Lebanon. Patrick Henningsen just wrote a big article about ISIS in Lebanon.
Well, you know, Lath did point out that the U.S. was going to use ISIS to effectively attack Lebanon.
Uh-huh. Well, what they said is they said to Shara, they said
Yeah.
all these foreign fighters you had to help you take Damascus. You got to get them gone. But
Yes.
we have an idea. We'll get them gone for you. We'll use them as a regional army. And
Yeah.
Shara, and that actually elevates Shara because it's like you're going to be our sort of regional warlord. You're now the new safekeeper of all of this chaos. And I can't keep forgetting the guy's name. He's either ambassador.
Al-Jilani.
No. The guy who spoke to Al-Jilani, some not lower level, ambassador or envoy or something. Wasn't Witkoff
Yeah.
or anybody we talk about normally. But they even he said, you're now a regional leader. You need to step up. Like a dad talking to his son, kind of like a pep talk. Like, here we
So,
go.
hey, we need your dogs to go and, you know,
Exactly
kill people in
that.
these other places.
And they can't keep them in Syria because they're wreaking havoc. They're absolutely wreaking havoc.
Well,
And
they
the
are
Americans,
murdering people left
left
and
and
right.
left and right. Bombing churches, murdering priests, taking Alawite girls hostage, stealing them just like they did the Yazidis. Nobody cares.
Did
Nobody
you
cares.
see the 10-year-old girl
Assad.
who they got impregnated? And like
10-year-old on the street.
this stuff, like, it is enraging.
Uh-huh.
It is enraging because, from my point of view, we do this. It's what we do in this country, meaning we pay for it. This is what we do around the world.
We got a
And we just-
10-year-old on the streets of Syria, pregnant by our whatever, and we're getting rid of sex trafficking lists. This is where we're at. This is where we are as a country. And Alan Dershowitz is on all the time talking about how we should lower the age of consent. We're very sick. We're on a very dark path. I don't want to get started on that topic because that's
That old fuck needs to die, and he is on that list, by the way.
no,
Where he was
100%,
like,
a bunch of
he was
more
like,
than hundreds of times.
apparently he didn't take off his socks.
He's
or
asking
something
for Ghislaine, his underwear. He's asking for Ghislaine for a pardon. I'm like, really? You think that this is the move right now for you? These
He
people
thinks
have
so.
no shame. No shame
He
whatsoever.
thinks so. He's like, man, there's something wrong with the age of consent. It should be much lower.
He did.
Oh,
He said 15,
yeah.
16, 17? What the hell?
He has plans, obviously.
They all do. They all have plans. And it comes from this weird libertarian, Yarvinite, transhumanist ideology. They're like techno-libertarians, so techno-fascists. They're like ANCAPs,
Is that
anarcho-capitalists.
transhumanist, though? I mean, that's just being a fucking pedophile.
It is because it becomes about how a person has autonomy over their body and they can make any decisions about their body. I mean, watch Peter Thiel's last interview with the New York Times. He says, the problem with this transgender stuff is it doesn't go far enough. We don't just want to switch out your genitals. We want to switch out your brain. We want to switch out your heart. We want to switch out whatever you want to switch out. They basically want to make you a modular being, and it's about having complete autonomy. So that also engages in the conversation about the age of consent and can kids consent to hormone blockers? Can they consent to sex? Can they consent to this? And their argument is yes. Yes, they can, because nobody has more autonomy over your body than you.
I know, but that's just pedophilia. Like, meaning what?
No. It's transhumanism and we're technocrats. We're the elite. It's not pedophilia. Not pedophilia. What do they call themselves? Evophiles. Evophiles.
I know, but a 12-year.
No. That's a teenager, Jamarl. That's a teenager. That's a woman. Is she at her period? Is she menstruating? It's a woman.
That is an ideological point of view, and nobody will see a 12-year-old as a child, short of a pedophile. Meaning, I'm trying to make the point of saying anybody can take any position that they want about anything. It doesn't make them right.
Oh, 100%.
And just because somebody can say, well, I'm a transhumanist, God bless you. But at the age of 12, you're still a child.
I don't want God to bless that.
I'm trying to make the point of saying anybody can think it. Like George Bush could say, yeah, waterboarding is enhanced interrogation. Okay, but is it? Like, meaning at this point, we're quibbling about reality itself. And a person with
I'm afraid they're going to change reality. That's what I'm getting at. Is that they're already deconstructing the norms, right? They've already dehumanized us. This could bring us back full circle. Not making us, but allowing us to watch Gaza while they did this to Gaza, aside from the horrific things that it has put the Palestinians through. Think about what it's done to the psyche of the international community, especially the Westerners who are not used to seeing this. It dehumanizes you without you even knowing it. Because you have to make it dehumanize the Palestinians, because you wouldn't be able to live with that sort of guilt or seeing that constantly. You have to dehumanize them in some way. It's not a far jump from dehumanizing Palestinians to then dehumanizing other Americans or Mexicans or Chinese people. That's not a far leap. Once they got us to dehumanize them and then ourselves, they can do whatever they want to us. Elon has already said basically, like, I want the AI because I want to control the narrative, like the story. And if you have AI, they'll use you for reference. And now you can actually rewrite the truth. And that's what these people want to do. And
but that's just media. Like, media has done that forever.
This isn't just
like
media.
Well, I'm just saying media has rewritten the narrative forever.
No,
political rhetoric.
Grok is not media. Grok is now a reference tool that people use to look things up. So if someone says, well, you're not the norm, because it's the majority of people use AI to research now, and the AI will tell you what it wants to tell you.
Yeah, but I think those people are out of their minds. The only thing that a computer can tell you is the point of view.
They're the majority. We're not.
Those people are just lazy. The reality of it is the only thing that AI can tell you is what it's been programmed to tell you, and most likely it's going to be cut in the direction of the creator of that AI.
That's the point.
That's not truth.
That's the point.
Truth is different, Sarah.
You're too smart, so you're not able to wrap your mind around this, but people literally use Grok as the word of God. I'm not kidding. Go on Twitter. And to wrap it all up with a nice little bow, Peter Thiel wants to make AI God. So there's that.
Sarah Bils.
He does. He said in the last interview.
There's a book called God, the God Maker.
Actually, this takes us closer to God, because, God wants you to transform yourself. Think about how warped that is. He goes, it actually doesn't go far enough, because Christianity wants you to transform your soul. So what if we could transform your soul?
Sarah, none of this matters. If people want to do that, they can do it. It's not right or wrong.
Wait until they make you do it.
Well, that's the catch of make is the issue. I mean, there's one thing, like, society is fluid, right? Society can be whatever society wants as long as it's the energy that's in it is sustainable. And so if a person wants to, look, I get it. I do understand it. If you can have, let's say it's genetic engineering for a moment, and a person says, I am going to get a brain chip because I need to be able to see. And a byproduct of the brain chip is that I can now interact with machinery without touching machinery.
Right.
Okay, does that force somebody else to now get that brain chip to compete in order to do work? Probably yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so does that mean now the majority of people end up with brain chips? And if you don't, you get left in the lurch. Yes.
Just like crypto, right? I'm not into crypto. I don't want to get into crypto. And everybody that I talk to, even, they're like, I'm just being honest with you. You're not going to make it. Like you have to learn this stuff.
You're not going to make it.
You got to learn this stuff. But like, it's the same idea, right? You have to do it or you're going to be left behind or you're not going to make it or you're going to be stuck with all the people left in the old world as we're in the new world and you guys kind of just die off in those. You know what I mean? Like they're creating a completely parallel society where there's a parallel economy. They're trying to develop parallel states. There's parallel judicial systems. There's parallel social systems.
I get that, but I want to be specific to the transhumanist thing. I guess from my point of view, society is always fluid. And as we get more complicated as a society, unless we pass laws and says, hey, you can't put in brain chips. Okay. I mean, it's very possible that you can put a brain chip in and now I can communicate with you through thought. Is that a negative? It's different. It created a different society. Definitely. I mean, but this social engineering has already been taking place. Our use of social media, our use of cell phones. Like all of these things are different. How we relate to each other is different. People don't just sit read books. People are in their phones. When people communicate, they communicate through text. I'm calling you when you are in Washington, whereas beforehand, I would never be able to have that conversation.
Pretty soon I won't even need the device. So pretty soon I won't even need the device.
Yes, but I'm saying all of these things are social engineering. It's just a matter of degrees, right? Or do you agree with that? And we can close it. I'm not trying to keep you. I'm sorry.
I don't know. I'm very scared of Peter Thiel and Alex
He's
Karp.
terrifying.
I listen to what they say.
Terrifying.
I know the power that they have.
Yeah, he's terrifying.
So,
and I don't want to put a
and I mean, it doesn't really matter anymore. It's like I'm very black pilled. It's completely out of our hands. The United States just signed another deal to cooperate in the field of AI with Israel, who has all of our data.
I saw that.
The people who just got a contract, Peter Thiel, who wants to chop kids' genitals off and switch out people's brains. Like I just don't know where to like even begin. And now he gives all of our data to Israel, who also likes to chop off kids' genitals.
To impart a closing, I don't know if positivity is the word for it, or more pleasant thought. I do think we're in prehistory. And I do think all of this has to fail before it gets to the point of changing to something better. And so if you just kind of let go of the wheel and let it all burn.
Okay. You're going to tell me to trust the plan now?
It's like it all has to burn.
I'm trying to be like, can we get a controlled burn here? Like, can we just kind of?
No, this is a mechanical process. I just look at it as a mechanical process. Like it's a system goes up until the point that it can no longer go. And the system is not suited for longevity. It's just not. It will burn. And when it burns, something else is going to come into play where the world says, maybe we don't need hegemons. Maybe hegemons are a problem. Meaning we're not there yet. But I don't get the sense that when the United States collapses as an empire, that the world is going to say that was a great idea. I think it's going to say that was a horrible idea. We need to do something different. Just like colonies, just like empires, and those things fell apart or changed form, I think it will be something different afterwards. There will be a new version of history. It is going to be a helter-skelter ride down.
Get your Dramamine.
Yeah, get your Dramamine. Sarah Bils for this happy go lucky segment. Sarah Bils
again.
The black pill is a former U.S. Navy.
Well, it's my birthday, so
when is your birthday?
Today. So I'm
happy
allowed
birthday.
To do what I want, and I'll cry if I want to, and I'll black pill if I want to. Deal with it.
Happy birthday! Happy birthday! Anything special that you guys are going to do?
This is it. You've been my gift. Thank you, Jamal. I'm going to go back to bed.
Well, you have a good one, Sarah.
Me and the puppy are going to watch shows and go back to bed.
Enjoy. Oh, let me say, what's his name?
Mishka means little bear.
Mishka. You know, if I had a kid, I would name him Misha after.
I love
Tal.
that name too, but I have a guy friend named Misha.
Do you? Mikhail Tal. He was my favorite chess player. His
Mikhail,
nickname
yeah,
was
his name's
Misha.
Mikhail.
So I love the name. You have a
Have
good
a
one,
good
okay? Maybe
weekend.
safe.
Thank you. We'll talk soon.
Have a good one, Mishka. Be safe.
Bye.
All right. What he said, the black pill in the morning for her birthday. That is fantastic. Now I'm happy. Mishka is too cute. I know, right? This is very adorable. I have wanted to, God, I miss my dogs. I used to have two. One Pitsu, who was an asshole, but a lovable asshole. And Jesus Christ, did I forget his name? Oh, Apollo. Apollo. We call him Apollo because when we got him, he was a puppy. He had a broken leg. We were being ironic when we named him. But the nicest dog you would ever meet. Like, he used to freak us out because even with the leg being damaged, he used to be trying to run around and everything. I was like, dude, you're freaking us out, man. You're freaking us out. They were a handful, but you miss them when they're not there. The wife got him into marriage. That's partially my fault because I let her keep both when I could have taken Apollo with me. But the rub is, how would that have worked? Right? I'm a fucking digital nomad at this point. I don't have a house. I don't have a place or dwelling to which I call my own, short of whatever I'm renting as an Airbnb at the time. And so it would be difficult to kind of drag a dog along on an airplane for 20 something hours. That wouldn't necessarily be the best life for an animal. So, yeah, I have bad thoughts about my ex for that. I have bad thoughts about my ex for that. But nevertheless, whatever. Let's go to the chat. Yesterday, I think I did a 4-hour show. I'm trying to avoid doing a 4-hour show again. What is this? Daciadrin. God can be considered as the absolute, the unconditional concept, or unconditioned concept, or the idea, according to Hegel or Schelling, Bruce Moore. God can be considered as the absolute, the unconditioned concept. Unconditioned concept. I love that one. The idea, according to Hegel and Schelling, Bruce Moore. I think you're talking about in reference to Dr. Zeman when he was like, it was a rejection of God. It was a rejection of God. And I think my point to him was kind of like, look, as I pointed out, this stuff is ideological. God is dead in this point of view because God is dead in this point of view. People add God to it in the sense that they want to add some kind of heft to a particular point of view, when the reality of it is the only thing you do have is a point of view in your objective. Does my point of view assist or is a disadvantage to whatever I'm trying to accomplish? That's it. That's all you got. That's all you got as a society. Now, a person who's religious could say that is a rejection of God. Fair enough, but that is their ideological point of view. Maybe you can even say theological point of view. I have no reference to their God in this concept. I can only deal with the reality of things. And the reality of things, we have points of view that either advance objectives in a particular direction or is disadvantageous to it. And oftentimes people will take a point of view, a workable point of view that is disadvantageous to life. Because from their point of view, life doesn't really have an objective. It's just life. Now, people who make a religious argument, the strongest suit for that religious argument is we need to live together. And in the context of living together, there are certain traits, certain ways of going about life that are advantageous to us being able to live together, having a decent world, decent society, etc. That is the religious strong suit. But you don't need to add God to make a logical argument about something being to your betterment or to your detriment as a larger society. Now, they would say, I'm wrong in this. And they would say, I'm wrong in this because you need something that brings people together in a real fashion. And a logical argument is not enough to bring people together in a real fashion. Frank Herbert even made that the case. Frank Herbert was like, any government needs a religion. Both of those things need to dovetail. Because if you don't have it that way, people are going to go their own separate ways. Your society is going to effectively crumble. Fair enough. That may be true. That may be true. I don't know. I think we need to get past this. Thank God, though. Windy U.S. And by the way, I'm not anti-religious by no stretch of the imagination, not an atheist by any stretch of the imagination. I have videos where I talk about psi function and all this stuff, spirit guides, all that stuff. Meaning, I do think there's something else there. I just don't think it cares. I don't think it intrudes. We have a responsibility to one another. We create this world in the way that we create this world. Nobody else is going to get involved. If it burns, it burns. That's dark. I get it. But I do think it's true. And again, I have this belief in these things external to our dimensional space. Wandy, USA. Fuck Jamal. I was planning to move to DC since San Antonio doesn't have Kaiser. Fuck flooding. I swim. I have 2.3 thousand a month. Look, DC is not horrible. Honestly, Richmond is better. If you were thinking about moving to the East Coast, or Virginia is better. Virginia is gorgeous. And it's nowhere near as expensive. Maryland is not as expensive. You can get a good apartment from Maryland for what, $1,300, give or take. So I don't want to dissuade you from it. It's just DC proper is expensive. And in the context for what you pay in DC proper, you can get a better property in Silver Spring, in Arlington, Alexandria, if you're trying to move into Northern Virginia area. I have deference to Richmond, Cabutos, Captain D's. I don't think Chicken Box is still there, but I used to love Chicken Box, the fish sandwich. Yes, I process it through food. That's the way I process the stuff. But no, Richmond is cheaper in regards to what you get for the value. DC, it's more difficult to find somewhere DC proper that is going to be a decent property in a decent neighborhood. Not to mention crime in DC is insane, just absolutely insane. The bureaucracy in DC is insane. Yeah, I didn't like DC. If I'm being bluntly honest with you, I'm not the right person to talk to about this. I hated DC. I was purely there for the radio job, and that was it. And when the radio job went belly up, I left within the first month or two. But Wandy, I don't want to dissuade you from it. Northern Virginia is very nice. Virginia is absolutely gorgeous. If you're talking about Northern Virginia, you have to talk about Maryland. All of those places are perfectly fair game, and you can find places that are very affordable in comparison to living in DC proper. And if you're living in Maryland or Northern Virginia, you can get the subway into DC when you need to. Just helping out. Sparky, perhaps too optimistic. Alex Craner surmises President Trump isn't releasing the Epstein client list, so he has the leverage to use those clients. Once released, the clients are useless. Alex and I had this argument about Trump. If you watched the last video that Alex and I were in, we had very stark disagreements on the issue of Trump. Look, any argument about anybody and about anything is effectively organizing a logical framework from which you're viewing it. You're creating a model. Never mistaking the model for the real thing. This is kind of like in physics, right? It's like they come up with a model of a proton, a model of an atom, a model of the universe. But don't mistake the model for the actual thing. Those things are different. The model is effective in so as much as it explains what you're looking at, and it makes logical sense. And the hope is that there's a logical continuity to the model that is real, and you can use it to describe reality. I think my model is more precise. I love Alex to death, and I bring him on all the time because his understanding of economics dwarfs any of my capabilities in that subject matter. But when we get into politics, we're in a different arena, buddy. We're in a different arena. I understand where Alex is coming from. He takes a more optimistic point of view of the stuff. I don't take a more optimistic point of view. I think these people are monsters. And my workable point of view organizes around that point of view. And I think my point of view is correct. They're murdering people in mass in Gaza. Donald Trump is paying for the murder of those people in mass. Donald Trump had an interview or negotiations that were never real never legitimate, and used it to attack a sovereign state with the idea of overthrowing and turning it into a failed state. That is what Trump was doing. That is what he was perfectly okay with. That was the entire point of the attack on Iran. Meaning, this is the quantity of the individual that you get: a evil, sadistic child with a gun, with an ego that is not matched by his intellectual capabilities. So that is my model of Trump. That is the person who I think he is. I think he's an evil, sociopathic child with a vocabulary and an intelligence that is so minute that you would have a difficult time getting a reading on some kind of medical device. I think he's a dumb, dumb man. And they put that dumb, hubristic egomaniac in position of authority. And he uses that position of authority and lies to the public as easily as he breathes. That is my point of view. My point of view has been correct all the way through this. And so my only confusion with Trump is whether or not he's ready to have 20,000 dead Americans come back in a body bag. He seems to be against that. But if you can get a failed state on the cheap with everything that means, you must understand what I'm saying here. I don't take an optimistic point of view of Trump because there's nothing to be optimistic about. He's hiding the Epstein list probably because he's on that goddamn list. And he's been completely obsequious to Israel, so he's probably hiding the list because of the Israeli connection. Also, there's no way to really talk about Epstein without talking about Israel. Those two things are linked. They're connected. So, let's be clear. This is not a moment to be optimistic. It's not about my wants. It's not about my wants. My wants don't matter. I would want a working kidney. Wants are for suckers. It's not about my wants. There are things that I have the power to control that I can go after. God bless me, or does God give me, what is it? God help me to know the difference between the things that I can change and the things that I can't. It's not about what I want for Trump. It's about what he is and what he's demonstrated that he is. Going into Gaza, pretending as if you have a ceasefire in order to allow Israel to rearm and completely go after a genocide whole hog. Okay, that is who Trump is. Not ending the war in Ukraine, knowing all of these people are getting killed. That is who Trump is. Pretending as if he cares about all of these people dying in Ukraine as he goes a murder spree in Yemen. That is who Trump is. Pretending that you're negotiating with Iran, and then you have a sneak attack when you're trying to overthrow the government of Iran and turn it into a failed state like Syria, where they're murdering Alawites. And you have a pregnant 10-year-old child who's laying on the street begging people for money and food. That is who Trump is. I hope you understand what I'm saying. This is not a moment to be optimistic. It's not a moment to be optimistic. Love Alex Kramer to death, but on this one, I think he's wrong. Black Spock, shout out to Ted Rall. Hope Mandani does well in New York City. I prefer to call him Mandani's wife's husband because his wife is gorgeous. I mean, I know I keep saying that. Do I have a picture of her? Do I have a picture of her? You people need reference. There it is, Mandani wife. I don't even know her name. What is her name? Rama Duwaji. Rama Duwaji, is that right? And by the way, he's a good-looking guy, so God bless him. Right here. And there are other pictures that are even better than this. You can see him in the background. And she's looking at her husband like, oh, you did you did so good, baby. You won that mayoral race. You won that mayoral race. But there are other pictures. I think the woman is gorgeous. But yes, I hope he does well. Because you must understand, if he does well, it sets a precedent and it sets a model with the hopes of the evisceration and dissolution of the Democratic Party in the way that it operates. Meaning you've created a new mode of Democrat in regards to who can get elected. But for that, you have to go through the beast. Meaning you have to go through the machine. These people are Agent Smiths. And in the case, you can't run. If you run, they're going to chase you. You have to actually stand there like Neo and beat the beast. Now, if Mandani can do that, succeed in a political sense, then Mandani sets a model for who can come behind him and who can also take power. If they think, well, you have to be obsequious to Israel, you have to take all of this money from billionaires, you have to be. Okay, what happens when that's not true, right? That is what Democrats are afraid of. They are afraid of somebody succeeding in a way and changing a model to which they have used to operate, where these new people can come into power, come into fruition, and effectively eliminate them in the same way that they eliminated New Deal Democrats. Third Way Democrats is just a model of thought that has taken over the Democratic Party, and they took it over from New Deal Democrats, these FDR-type Democrats. Okay, well, they know that they can be replaced every bit as much as they replace what came before them. Mandani could be a pathway to that. They know it. Sanders could have been a pathway to that. They know it. The unfortunate part is people like Sanders and Corbyn are weak human beings in the political sense. And on some level, it's almost like their lefty bona fides makes them weak, weirdly enough. Hopefully Mandani is not that guy, and he's a new breed. We'll see. We will see. Shout out to Rall. Hope Mandani does well. Agreed. Shout out to you, Jamal, and awesome guests. Well, thank you, Paul Green, Dennis. Much appreciated. Sparky, Iran pretending that they're on the verge of having a nuclear weapon. It's like Saddam Hussein allowing neighbors to believe that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction when they didn't. How did that work out? Sparky, I honest to God think they were functioning under an illusion. We live in the US. We know that these people are monsters. We know they're sociopaths. We know it. The things that they say, the things that they do, even in the way that they engage with us, we know that they are monsters. They're predators. Now, when Iran is in this, Iran may think to itself, we can negotiate. Now, people like us would say, you're out your fucking mind. What do you mean you can negotiate? It's like they've destroyed Syria. They've destroyed Libya. I mean, for God's sake, they sodomized Gaddafi with a machete, and Hillary Clinton cackled. We came, we saw, he died. Libya turned into a basket case where they were literally selling black slaves. And the US considered, that's a win. These are the people you're dealing with. They're murdering Alawites in Syria, something that was obvious was going to happen. And we say, that's a win. Let's shake the hand of the guy from ISIS and put him in charge. That's a win. And we said, these people are monsters. I'm not saying they're monsters because it makes me feel good to say it. I'm saying it as a direct result of what they do. And this didn't just start. I mean, the kill squads that we used to pay for in South America, these people are monsters. I hope you get my point. When we're looking at the killing of all of these people in Iraq, and we think to ourselves, these people are monsters. They consider failed states to be wins. And so when you're looking at Iran and you're saying, hey, they're monsters. Do you honestly believe you can negotiate with them? And Iran's like, we have 6% enrichment. You can negotiate with us and you can lower it. And we point out, dude, it's not about the enrichment. It's about the very fact that you are breathing. They don't like that you're breathing. Are you going to negotiate with the fact that you're breathing? Is that what you're going to negotiate with? In which case, the rational man says, well, no, I'm talking about my life. Yes, they want your life. It's not about the enrichment. It's a stalking horse to take your life. But they may not have known that. And they may have held these viewpoints of you can negotiate with the US. I'm saying they might have been functioning under an incorrect assessment, which is why they did 60%. Now, to be fair to Iran, they may not have had a choice. Internal dynamics and internal pressure may have pushed them to have negotiations, knowing full well that the US couldn't necessarily be trusted. At the very least, Ayatollah knew that the US couldn't be trusted. Pezeshkian, well, as you can hear Sarah, she thinks he's a plant. She thinks the coup has already taken place. And that they put that small, diminutive, bad idea man into the position for the exact reason Look, I've said it before. I think Pezeshkian was the safest man on the planet in regards to when Israel was attacking Iran. I don't think for one moment that anybody thought of taking his life, taking him out. He was a paragon of safety. I'm saying it for reasons. Otherwise, you'd be stuck with before times in the forbidden. Whoa, whoa, whoa. What is that? What is that? What am I missing? What am I missing? What you did, how did that work out? Otherwise, you'd be stuck in the before times in the forbidden zone. Hey, Sparky, you lost me on that one. You lost me on that one. Happy birthday, our beautiful Sarah. Yes. Yes. I try to avoid calling her beautiful and stuff like that, even though I think she's very attractive. And yes, happy birthday to Sarah. Diane and Bo was a sweetheart too. Yes, Bo was a sweetheart. Bo's a sweetheart. I don't like talking about Bo because Bo was the only dog I had to put down. And that is a painful experience. That is a painful, painful experience. Sparky, on a side note, having those food processors ship flash freeze fish sandwich fillets right out the ocean. It's made for some consistent good fast food fish sandwiches in the last few days. Sparky, I have never seen a flash what? A flash food fish sandwich right out of the ocean. I've never seen that. I've never seen that. Chicken Box no longer exists. But it was this little hole-in-the-wall store that had been there for decades. And they used to have some of the best fish sandwiches. God, those things used to be so good. Sparky, Alex Craner doesn't agree with Trump's method. He merely is guessing Trump's possible motive. It ties Sarah's theory about MBS, etc. Oh, I see, with the Abraham Accords. Basically, Trump is releasing the information so he can use it to blackmail. And he's trying to get what he wants in a political sense. Because all of these world leaders are somehow connected with Epstein. I don't know, maybe. Who knows? I mean, it's still a betrayal. Iran should never, ever forget that no matter what they do, they remain the infamous list Wesley Clark. Sparky, from your mouth, God's ears. Your mouth, God's ears. I hope they do. I hope they do. I hope they do. I hope they do. God knows I hope they do. The problem that I think Iran had is what my guest pointed out before. When I had spoke to people about this, they said, look, we had liberals in this country that believed that the ills of the country were from the government, not from external forces. So the US, Love and Light, Superman, ice cream, pizza, etc., that it was us that was the issue, meaning it was Iran that was the issue. And that if we just negotiated, then things would have been better. And so you had to appease these people who weren't brought up in the revolution, who didn't know what the Shah was like. Meaning you had a new generation of people that blame the government for its ills. Now, you could blame the government for some of its ills. I am not into theocratic governments. I think those things are insane, frankly. It's like, yeah, I'll stand by that. I think theocratic governments are insane. By the same token, democracies don't seem to be much better. Need more choice, more options, more capabilities. But incompetent leadership is incompetent leadership. And no, I'm not putting that on Iran. I would not want to live in a theocratic government. I put it that way. To each their own. It's not my wants. And I would wager to you that if you leave them to their devices, it will collapse on its own into something that they define as better. But I think that of all governments, if you're not putting pressure on governments, they become something else. People strive towards liberty. They strive towards this notion of free will. Those are things that are just built into what it means to be a human being. People don't necessarily like unfairness, and any notion of unfairness or injustice they tend to push against, in which case you end up with a better society, providing you leave those societies to their devices, which is why I don't like touching and going after other countries in a sense. Whatever, put it to the side. The way it was explained to me was that because these liberals are in these governments, these liberals who voted in a reformist had to see it for themselves, that the oven was hot, that these people are monsters and can't be trusted. And when they did see it, with nearly 1,000 people being killed as Iran was legitimately negotiating in good faith, then their eyes became open. And in a moment of radicalization, they changed their point of view. Meaning the government had more latitude after they were attacked than they did before they were attacked. After they were attacked, the public rallied around the government and understood, even the liberals, hey, the issue is not our government. The issue is these monsters, these Europeans, these Westerners that are against us. That is the issue. Now, will they use that for some kind of good ends in order to move in a particular direction? I don't know. I don't know. Could Pezeshkian get elected today? I hope not. I hope not. On Spark, I was referencing Peter Thiel's wanting to chip people's brains using dystopian movie language. Oh, fair enough. Before time's Forbidden Zone. You know, the issue with the brain chip is not really the brain chip. It's who's making it. And the fact that we live in a capitalistic society, that you can't trust these people. If you live in a different world, let's say Star Trek world, and they have a chip that allows you to access information faster, person-to-person communication, would you do it? Now, the problem with it, of course, is the moment that you put a chip in your head, how do you know you're not being controlled, right? That's always the issue with the brain chip. So, what is your reality like if your reality can be manipulated? What is it like if you get an infection? Can they spoof your chip to make you think that there's an alien invasion? Like, all of the stuff comes into play the moment that you put stuff in your head. Love the fit today, Jamal. Love the fit. I didn't have a fit, Karen. But thank you, Karen. Thank you. I appreciate it. Sparky, Sarah may be sort of right about Iran's president being a plant, an unwitting semi-plant. Well, they think, and a lot of people think, to be fair, that Raisi was murdered, and that Iran didn't necessarily want to own up to the fact that it was murdered, because the moment that you admit that he's murdered, you're stuck with doing about something about the fact he was murdered. Meaning, if you accuse another country of killing your president, you're stuck with that. You're stuck with that. And it's possible Iran, doing everything in their power to avoid a war, didn't want to be stuck with it. And so it was an accident. Here's the thing, though. Everything that Iran did to avoid a war ended up bringing on a war. That's illustrative of something. That is illustrative of something. Okay, not specifically a brain chip, but that sort of thing. Fair enough, Sparky. Fair enough, fair enough. All right, I'm going to close this. I'm going to say like, I'm going to say share, I'm going to say subscribe. I will see you guys bright and early tomorrow morning. I want to thank all of you, by the way. These shows often get demonetized. I know I say it every show. I don't dwell on it because it's not really the point of the show. But I do thank all of you for your contributions. It really does help keep the show afloat, keep the show going. At some point, I will try to get a producer at some point. It needs to be overage. Oh, wait, somebody else? What if all Elon really purchased was Trump's old DMs when he bought failing Twitter? Trump was addicted until they kicked them off. I wonder what's in those private messages. Oh, that's interesting, right? I don't know. I don't know, LOC. I don't know. He's never leaked them, though. He's never leaked them. Because look, if there was something that Elon Musk really wanted to get back at Trump, you just leak the message. You just leak it. He doesn't have to have his hands on it. It shows up, News Nation. It shows up on Jamal Thomas's email. It shows up on whatever, right? So I don't know. Oh, that's such a good point. You think of all the private messages that people have put and sent and things that they've put in those private messages. And Elon Musk has control of all that stuff at one point. Whew. Scandalous. Scandalous. All right. I'm going to say like. I'm going to say share. I'm going to say subscribe. I'm going to say hit the like button. Did I say that? I said say like. I want to thank all of you for your support. Everybody that supported on PayPal, Patreon, buy me a coffee. Yes, there are a lot of them, so I have to remember all of these things. Super chats, memberships, all of those things. Thank you. Thank you. You have my complete, unfiltered gratitude. Yeah. I'll see you guys bright and early tomorrow morning. By the way, I have a damn good show for you tomorrow. John Kiriakou is going to be here. Who else? John Kiriakou. Wait, did I miss something? All fast food fish fillets come from those food processed ships. God bless them. God bless them indeed. Chicken box, God, man, they used to have a flounder sandwich that was fantastic. Capitalese is also really good. The one on Chamberlain, the other one sucks. So if you're in Richmond, one on Chamberlain, the other one sucks. Cabuto's, West Broad, the other one sucks. The West Broad one, whew, fantastic. Fantastic. Yes, I'm hungry, so I'm thinking about the stuff through food. Tomorrow, we have Dennis Fritz. That was the one that wrote the book. The one I often bring on with Colonel McGregor. Not Colonel McGregor. Colonel Wilkerson. Colonel Wilkerson. But tomorrow, Dennis Fritz is going to be on. John Kiriakou. I thought it was somebody else for the 7 o'clock hour. I was trying to get Patrick Henningsen, but I don't think he's going to do it. I have to find the 7 and 8 o'clock spot. But at the very least, the last 2 spots are going to be fantastic. You guys have a fantastic evening, and I will see you guys bright and early tomorrow morning. Jamal Thomas Morning Show signing off. Be safe, be kind to the degree that you can be kind. It's all environmental, right? Do your best. Have a good one all.